today's live stream. A little happy hour, a little dinner. We got an event planned, Q4.
Yes.
Stay tuned.
Yes.
We're going into the events business. Robbie, Andy, the boys. Shout out.
2 straight days, live stream straight from permissionless to Rollup TV. Coming for the #1 spot. Don't wait up.
Threw down 2 days live stream. A little happy hour, a little dinner. We got an event planned, Q4.
Yes.
Stay tuned.
Yes.
We're going into the events business. Robbie, Andy, the boys. Shout out.
2 straight days, live stream straight from permissionless to Rollup TV. Coming for the #1 spot. Don't wait up.
See you around the timeline. Feels good to be back.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Rollup TV, Thursday, November 13th. We are live from our parents' basements.
It's a bear market. Everyone's dumping on us. We said the institutions is, we're all going to overthrow the institutions. We're going to form a new revolution. And now the institutions are dumping on us. Are we dumping on the instos or are they dumping on us, Andy?
Dude, I remember in 2017, all we ever wanted to do was dump on the institutions. And then we get the chance to do it and you fight me on it. You're like, no, we can't sell. It's a super cycle. It's a buddy. I want to nuke my coins on all these dudes' heads. On their heads. I want to sell my coins to JP Morgan and tell them good riddance. I'll see you a little bit later in 2026 for you.
Yeah. What are the catalysts? I mean, is it just a bull market fatigue and that's why we're headed lower? Or is it any bearish catalyst that you see out
it's
there?
just look, there's just the buyers are just not really available. GM Path. Good to see you in the chat, brother. Good to see you in the chat. Guys, we got an amazing stream. We're going to start with our AI Super Cycle segment with the Near Intense crew. We'll be right back. We're going to roll that into, and then we'll have a bit more of a chill path forward after we roll that into, guys. So we'll see you guys in just a sec. Get the animation rolling, and let's get these guys started. Alrighty, guys, we're going to get Harshit and Alex up on the stage for AI Super Cycle episode 10. Welcome back to AI Super Cycle powered by Near, the intense privacy AI maxi chain. I mean, guys, they have simultaneously won the AI narrative and privacy narrative while also dominating intense for the Zcash trade. Near, we are proud to be partnered with Near on the show. We have actually Harshit from the Near Foundation and Alex from Aurora, kind of like a subsidiary company. Let's get them up and let's start talking near intense, near privacy. Guys, welcome to the show. Real quick, we've got new types saying so much uncertainty on the horizon. Government only reopened until January. More layoffs continuing to come in from AI. Trump not releasing government data. There's a lot of fun out there, guys. But good news is we're not talking about markets today. We're talking about the technology. Harshit, Alex, welcome to the show.
Hi, Andy. Thanks for having us here.
Guys, Near Intense has taken the entire crypto Twitter by storm because of one UI. Simply because you can go and trade Bitcoin to Zcash to Solana, and it's such an easy way. I did it. I took some ETH from the ETH network on my ledger to the Bitcoin network. I had a whole Bitcoin instantly. It took about 2 minutes to show up in my ledger. It was incredibly fast. It was zero slippage. You guys are doing something right. We got a lot to talk about. Harshit, why don't you give us a quick intro about what you do at Near, what your kind of main focus is. Alex, you as well. Guys, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having us, Andy and Robbie. It's been a pleasure. Long-time fan of the Rollup. So I'm head of strategy at Near Foundation. I've been with Near for 5 years. And I've been working closely with Alex and the Defuse team at scaling Near Intense. We've been just focused on growth across distribution channels. And yeah, I'm happy to be on the podcast and talk about all things Near. Over to you, Alex.
Yeah, I'm Alex. I'm a techie and also responsible for Near Intense. Has been building the infrastructure for blockchain for 10 years, with Near for 5 years. Launched Rainbow Bridge, the trustless bridge in between Ethereum and Near, and then launched Aurora and now Near Intense. So all of the projects are continuing to live, and I'm happy to deliver seamless user experience to all of you.
I think it's important to mention just some stats around Near Intense, since both of you guys were instrumental in this launch. $4.6 billion of volume since the launch, and it's only been live for a few months. $500 million in Zcash flows. Incredible, right? So obviously Zcash has taken the world by storm. People love the idea of privacy, shielded transactions, all of this. Previously, Zcash was this walled garden. Near Intense opened this up. So what changed to finally unlock this kind of traction, right? When you guys were looking at the ecosystem of Near, the ecosystem of Zcash, finally launching this product, you were able to essentially unleash these two ecosystems. What was the and Harshit, maybe we'll start with you. What was the strategy behind this product launch? What did you have Zcash in mind? What was going through your mind when you were thinking about the planning and the design stages of Near Intense?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and thank you so much for the kind words. Indeed, it's been a journey. And fun fact, as of yesterday, Near Intense has been live for a full year. We announced Near Intense exactly a year ago at our flagship conference, Redacted, in the past year. It's been fun seeing how far we've come. As far as Zcash and the design considerations that went into building Near Intense, we had this idea from day one that Near Intense should be this on-chain marketplace where anyone across the world should have access to any asset that they want. We wanted to get to feature parity with Binance and Coinbase. That was the first goal that we had in mind, because like in our view, Binance is the best chain abstracted app. Users don't really know which chain they're on. They can get Zcash, Dogecoin, whatever, with simple cash that they just on ramp through any on ramp. So that was the vision we had in mind. And going down the list of chains, we always felt that since we have to support all chains, Zcash was a no-brainer. The chain had Lindy, it has been around, and there was just a vocal community of traders and users that wanted it. And I don't know if you guys remember, but close to a year ago, there were a bunch of these sort of notices by a bunch of exchanges, as in Zcash is a risky asset, and some exchanges were even contemplating delisting Zcash. Near Intense around January of the year was the first on-chain avenue to support Zcash trading, and even before the whole mania around Zcash started, we were supporting the Zcash ecosystem. We saw days where $1 to $2 million of Zcash was traded organically, and yeah, over the past few weeks and months, we've just been the top avenue to trade Zcash on chain. So that basically was the consideration. And that said, we have the same vision. We do want to roll out more assets across all chains, and make Near Intense the sort of connective tissue that connects all chains and all assets across users everywhere. Alex, if you have anything to add, feel free.
Yeah, the technology-wise, the core unlock was the design in several cross-chain and chain abstraction primitives on the Near protocol. One of them is called chain signatures, on top of which there is a trustless bridge that is built. This is like a natural extension of the Rainbow Bridge, and this bridge is called Omni Bridge, and Omni because it connects multiple networks. And what these technologies are allowing us is to work with chains that do not have smart contracts or do have strange runtimes, the ones that people are usually not developing smart contracts for. And we saw this opportunity in this design that the majority of the cross-chain infrastructure, they're focused on EVM chains and maybe extended a little bit into Solana. But if you're going to take a look at the coin market cap, then you will see that the volume of Cardano trading is multiple times bigger than the volume of the trading on all of the L2s combined, with maybe exception of Base. So there is no need to focus on this long tail. You just need to make sure that all of the assets are available. So what would be the good architecture for this? That was the core consideration. And we are able, with Near Intense, to add networks pretty fast. We believe that in just this month, we're going to launch 6-7 networks. And one of them is already launched. This is Litecoin as of a couple of days ago. So we're just continuing making sure that all of the assets are available for everybody.
Yeah. Guys, one of the things that was, plaguing the interop space for a long, long time was the extensibility, right? You could have some composability and extensibility within the Ethereum ecosystem in particular, but once you started to go outside of those ecosystems, it really started to fragment. And then we saw some L1s, but they didn't have as robust of a design if they were operating across these different VMs, right? And so there was quite a rich design space in the interop landscape for this particular design. How have you made the Near Intense system so extensible, right?
Yeah.
Bitcoin, Zcash,
any chain.
any chain, these are typically walled gardens, right?
Yeah.
And my understanding is you need some sort of verification service, at least on the destination chain, in order
It's
to
called market
confirm.
makers, Robbie.
Well, you still need to get some sort of confirmation from the destination chain in order to understand and confirm that your coins did in fact arrive, right?
Of course.
Yeah, exactly. This is a very, very good question. So we keep all of the smart contracts available on the Near blockchain, and through the chain signatures, this technology literally allows these smart contracts to have private keys. These both ECDSA and EDDSA. So they cover all of the modern blockchains. And what it allows us to have is these smart contracts to keep control of the assets on the other chains. So that's why we don't need to build smart contracts on these networks. But we actually need to move the messages of that there is a user who deposited assets into the protocol from other networks to Near. There is a tiered approach on how we're taking care of it. With some networks, we would like to have a maximum kind of security in integration. And for these, we're doing like a super heavy lifting that was first done with Rainbow Bridge. We develop a light client of the specific network as a smart contract on Near blockchain. So we can actually prove any single event that is happening on that chains. This is true with Ethereum. This is true with Bitcoin itself, with Zcash. And this is true with a set of additional networks. But not for all of the networks you are able to have light clients, and it is very resource intensive to support this. So for these networks, we're going with an approach of multiple parties who are observing the full nodes of these networks or the RPC providers. So these parties are agreeing about the what is actually happening, what is the event that happened, and then this MPC solution is used as a approval authority of the deposit of the assets. So it's like a mix of these different things. And obviously, over time, we are making it more and more robust where we can. But we start with our starting point is already pretty robust. There are approximately 20 kind of participants in the MPC network. This is on par with projects like Wormhole that have 19 guardians. And pretty soon, the upgrade to this network will lead us to 100 observers of these networks.
Yeah. And so when it comes to because I was joking about market makers, but Intense is effectively a network of solvers and people that need, that put orders in, and solvers create these orders. And then, there's even like rebalancing that happens. There's some rebalancing protocols, like Everclear does like these cross-chain rebalancing. Not sure if you guys are using them or have heard of them, but that's a whole other kind of problem space to solve. Harsh is laughing at me because he's definitely heard of them. How do you guys solve that the kind of issue of, okay, we have X amount of solvers who want to solve different routes. They prefer to just do Bitcoin and Zcash, or they prefer to do Near, Sol, and Zcash. How do you guys kind of like create the solver network that is so efficient as it is today, that effectively has very minimal slippage and what appears to be very like minimal fees? When I used the product 2 weeks ago, I think it felt like I paid zero fees. I don't think that's exactly right, but it's very minimal. Talk to us about the fee structure. Talk to us about the incentivization mechanism for solvers and how you kind of keep them all happy, with which routes that they want to solve.
So our core primitive here is that the only most efficient thing that you can do with in order to create a very efficient market is make it open. Like it's totally known to everybody. So anyone is able to join and market make on the Near Intense. It is an open API. The thing that but there is no from the protocol, there is no implied trust to the market makers. Since we are settling all of the transactions on chain, it is either it is settled or it is not. So what the backend part of the protocol, what we call a solver bus, the RFQ system, what it does, it actually monitors the performance of the solvers. And in case the solvers are, misbehaving, they're signing some kind of quotes that they are not delivering, and eventually the transactions are failing, then we are either, if we have a contact with the party, then we are saying that like something is wrong. Or if we don't have a contact with the party, well, then they're just getting excluded out of the RFQ propagation. So an open market with lots of competition here is what brings very efficient prices. And if you would think of it, these market makers are able to do lots of things. They are able to hedge their positions through counter trading on the biggest centralized exchanges. They're able to hedge their positions with perps. They're able to actually execute some OTC deals for parties who are willing to acquire a particular position. And it is okay for them to pay just like the market rate. It's just because they are earning in some other place. So all of these things literally makes Near Intense an aggregator of the liquidity, not only for the liquidity that is on chain, but also for the off chain or centralized venues liquidity. That's why the prices are so good. And we have the stats that approximately for the 50% of the trades that are done on the Near Intense, the prices are better than on Binance and on any centralized exchanges, just because solvers are combining liquidity from multiple places.
Yeah, it's insane. I mean, Kane put out this tweet saying that we have Kane on the show next, and he's talking about, you know, Infinex, TGE, and, you know, he writes that Infinex integrates Near protocol Intense and will soon allow shielded Zcash transactions, which means you can move funds between wallets inside Infinex without exposing your trades. And Harsha, you made a funny point, which is like, Binance is the best chain abstracted app in the space. And, you know, I think that's what, you know, that's what Kane's trying to basically achieve with Infinex now, to kind of take down some of the DeFi centralized kind of parties here. I'm curious from your perspective when it comes to the kind of growth of Near's intent layer as kind of like this chain abstracted layer for the space. How do you think about this more broadly, as far as chain abstraction goes, as far as the broader growth of this like vision of, you know, let's take away all the power from centralized exchanges in a sense and try to build this like DeFi super app that Infinex is doing? You know, what do you have to say more broadly about Near's role in that vision?
Yeah, that's a phenomenal question. So I do agree. Infinex is indeed the closest on-chain representation to what a Binance type chain abstracted app could look like if it was fully on-chain, and they're using Near Intent. So our vision is to go beyond what Near Intents currently is. So in its current iteration, if you go on Near Intents, the UI or any other application that's being powered by Near Intents, it's used for cross-chain spot trading, basically bridge and swap across chains of native assets. But our ambition is far bigger than the current iteration. So if you've seen these diagrams of concentric circles that talk about total addressable market, we believe that the Near Intents total addressable market is way bigger than the on-chain market that we see right now. So we are currently operating in the smallest circle, the innermost circle, where we're trying to cater to users across various chains, offering them cross-chain spot trading. Then a bigger circle outside the current circle would be the real world and onboarding capital from TradFi onto on-chain rails, so integrating things like fiat intents. And then the final and the biggest circle, which is the biggest market in the next few months and years, would be the agentic economy. So a thesis that I personally have and that Ilya also talks about quite a lot is the future of on-chain order flow generation will be agentic. So we will see more agent orchestrated and agent generated order flow than human generated order flow. And Intense gives us a best shot at catering and positioning ourselves for that economy when that happens. So that's really the Near ambition. And the way we're thinking about evolving the Near Intense product itself is we will introduce more advanced order types, more trading types. So starting with things like DCA, escrow intents, things like stop loss, and giving users the opportunity to express their opinion in the form of a trade or intent, like derivatives, is something that you'll see rolling out in the next few months. So that basically brings us, as I said earlier, at parity with whatever you would see in just one UI on a centralized exchange. And across DeFi, you have a lending protocol or a perps exchange, bringing all of these functionalities together into a very simple, natural language-driven agentic platform is what we're trying to achieve in the next few months.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we've kind of just seen the initial wave of this agentic on-chain experimentation, and I think next year we probably see a lot more of that really come to light. I think another big thing that a lot of people are excited about with what you guys specifically are building is the privacy aspect of this. When it comes to Zcash, the shielded transactions, and just generally like how you guys are thinking about privacy, even when it comes to like the AI stuff that the team is doing. When it comes to the Intense product specifically, I I know it's not always private. Obviously, we're dealing with public blockchains here for the most part. What is the difference in privacy levels when I'm doing a public blockchain transfer from like ETH network to Bitcoin network, knowing that I have different addresses, different chains, different entire signature designs? You've got like SegWit and stuff on Bitcoin, and then on Ethereum, you've got different types of transaction structures. How private is that? And then how private is like the level of I want to go from Bitcoin to Zcash in the shielded manner? What are the levels of privacy with the near intent product?
So if you're trading ETH to Bitcoin, your actual trade is traceable, and the connection between your wallets can be reproduced. This is what we show to people in our Explorer, but this is also something that people are really asking for when they are doing, for example, some investigations of the flow of the funds, and they would like to try to understand how the entities are moving funds. Now, if we're talking about Zcash, because of the privacy features of the Zcash, users, like now, we suddenly have only one end of the transaction that is kind of known with the public history. Because when users are withdrawing assets to Zcash, they are able to shield their assets, and then we are losing the trace of this. This is the whole premise of the Zcash's privacy stance. And the important thing also to say that they, besides only this feature, they have an additional feature of paying for something using Zcash and their partners. And their partners usually are accepting stable coins for payment. And what is happening during this transaction is that user funds from the shielded asset, shielded address are transferred to the near intents, and then they are swapped. All of this is happening publicly, and then there is a withdrawal to a service. But the origin of funds now is shielded and it is private. So I think we're getting into, with the privacy aspect, we're getting finally into this on par world with the traditional finance, because up until now we are in this very strange situation when all of the financial transactions are available for everybody to see. This is very strange. It's like you're working with your wallets that are transparent and everybody knows how much money do you have. And we are, I do not think that like this is like a criminal thing. Privacy is a very important human right, and it is instilled in the traditional financial system. And the only thing that Zcash and more protocols who are focused on privacy are trying to get us to is actually just be on the same level of privacy with the traditional finance. And from my point of view, this is a direction worth going and worth exploring. And hopefully all of the regulators are going to understand it, that it's okay.
I hope so too.
I'd love to kind of bring some of these through lines together, because on one hand, we have private money, and then on the other hand, we have agentic commerce, right? And agentic money. And so you guys are kind of pushing the envelope from both of these ends, pushing towards the agentic economy, pushing private money, and making sure that it's ubiquitous on chain. And I'm just curious how these things are going to converge in your mind, right? Because I think we have like, the centralized AI cabal, and then we have, the decentralized open source AI cabal. And, we're pushing stable coins, we're pushing private money. And I'm just curious how you guys see, and in particular, how you see Near as a blockchain for AI, also a blockchain for private money, and connecting a lot of blockchains together, producing shielded transactions, making sure that the origin of the money is private. How important is that when we transition into more of an agentic economy? Can you just maybe give some examples or some use cases as to why that's significant?
So I'm going to start, and Harshit, maybe you can continue. But I have this very straightforward point of view on the world. There are two ways how I interact with the world. One is when I want something, I want to get some food, transportation, or I want to learn Chinese in 5 years. So there is my intent. I know what I want. I need to find a counterparty who is going to deliver this to me. And there is a second way how I interact with the world, and when I'm listening to the world. When the world feeds information into me. This is when I'm scrolling TikTok, YouTube, or Twitter. And at this moment in time, all of the algorithms in these platforms are tuned the way that I am actually the product, and they are monetizing my attention. And I don't like it. I don't want to live in the world where AI is focused on getting more money out of me. Like this is not the way how I want to live. That's why we need to have user-owned AI, the AI that is protecting me, that is acting on behalf of me, giving me the information that I want to get based on my deep internal knowledge and deep internal goals. At the same time, I'm absolutely okay with paying for implementing of my intents. This is my model of the world, and that's why Near is standing on these 2 feet: private AI, user-owned AI, and also intents that are powering the kind of implementation of the goals of humans.
Harsha, anything to add there?
No, not really. I mean, I think it's really these various Legos. Privacy is the bedrock for the future of the agent economy. I think it's a prerequisite. If as a user or a developer, you don't have the choice to verify what data you put on the blockchain or what data you put on a model, I think we're living in a nightmarish scenario then. So definitely agree with everything Alex said, and let's do believe it's a prerequisite.
Harsha, people are pretty excited about the Near token. You know, this is like this Zcash Near Starknet kind of meme going around. I fielded a question from the community here, wondering how Near intense traction and adoption impacts the Near token.
Yeah, that's always an interesting one, right? So I mean, our vision is that everything that we do has to drive value back to the Near token. That is the sole mandate for the core team, that whatever products we build, whatever value flows we onboard into the Near ecosystem should drive value back to the Near token. So the Near intent system is already generating cash flows. It's already generating a significant economy and size of economy on chain. The idea would be that down the line, maybe we would conduct buybacks of the Near token. So right now, the way we look at Near intents is we have the opportunity to unite various ecosystems together. So you give this very cool example of Starknet. It's been a pleasure working with their team. They're one of the coolest teams out there who are trying to achieve this end game of zero knowledge scalability. And Li has, of course, this background of being the Zcash co-founder as well. There's this great opportunity in front of us to connect a programmable sort of layer 2 environment with this store of value private asset, and Near becomes this orchestrating medium that connects these two ecosystems together. So I believe, like, conventionally builders or founders have looked at just capturing value playing PvP games. We believe that expanding the pie for crypto as a whole is the bigger opportunity out there to capture value. And we do want to capture value from the centralized custodians of users' funds, not other open source ecosystems. So that's where the value comes for the Near token.
But I feel like people are wondering, like, okay, great, you have this adoption. Hyperliquid was doing all these buybacks. Uniswap just announced this unification proposal. Like, are you guys taking the Near token seriously? Like, what is this going to look like? How do we get this thing, you know, to start a next, you know, kind of bull cycle? And I'm not asking you to like sit here and like, you know, pump the token, but like people want a bit more clarity as to like how the team is really thinking about it, like strategically, tangibly. Maybe you could provide anything there.
So the design on the way how to properly bring the value back into the Near token is something that we are working on at the moment. There are different models, and different protocols are executing, once again, different models. There are simpler models like Hyperliquid. There are more complicated models like Curve is doing, for example, like with the VE, CRV. And besides all of these models, there are also regulators, and then they are also asking questions, right? So we would like to make sure that we are in a good position to deliver something that is compliant, that is tangible, and that is actually properly driving value to everyone in the Near ecosystem. And so as soon as we are going to know how this value appreciation mechanism is going to work, the Near token economy is going to be updated, and everybody will know. If you want to know it first, subscribe to my Twitter.
Harshit, anything to add
Shout
there?
out right there.
No, I think that was well said. We definitely are researching and will come out with a very clear plan as to how we conduct any buybacks of sorts. But I mean, I had a tweet the past week where I was talking about why we believe in the near revanchism theory internally. So the idea is near has been around for 5 years now. It's a layer one that has gone through cycles. We've seen builders come and go. With near intents, we have this opportunity to not only expand the space and onboard more capital collectively into the space, but really do something special for the near ecosystem. So indeed excited for all of that.
Yeah.
Could you expand upon that? What is revanchism? Like what is the philosophy there at Near?
So it's gaining lost ground basically. So the idea was, like, I fundamentally believe that all layer ones without a solid product and product market fit that accrues value back to the token will
Right.
have their premiums eroded. Like, no one's going to trade a layer one just because it's a layer one that's been out there for 5 years. You have to have fundamental value being accrued back to the token, good products that people want to use and people want to pay for. So that's really the core focus right now. We are a product first ecosystem instead of an ecosystem first ecosystem, if that makes sense. Because, like, there's this idea that if we build good products that have product market fit, that are generating fees and is being recycled back to the token, there will be an organic ecosystem that forms around the token itself. Forms around the product itself. And a good example of that is Solana. Like, their whole thesis and whole approach to go to market has always been consistent with the fast chain, building Nasdaq on chain, and you can see that in the use cases that are dominant and predominant on Solana, wherein everything is catered towards finance 2.0 or ICM. And I think that is the future we see for Near as well, where agentic commerce happens on Near. Intents is the enabler, and this leads to the token capturing lost ground in the coming months.
Yep. Yep. All right, guys. Well, Harshit, Alex, appreciate your time spending this live stream with us on our AI Supercycle show. You guys have been great partners, have been done amazing work in this space. We're headed down to Dev Connect next week. It's going to be an absolute pleasure seeing all the builders down there in the Ethereum community. I think we're going to meet up with Lane as well down there. So yeah, should be a good week, guys. Thanks for your time on the show. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having us.
Cheers, guys.
See you next time. Thanks, guys.
Alrighty, man. That was a great AI Supercycle episode, Rob. I mean, look, Near Intense is absolutely dominating. They are coming to market with tons of volume, and we're getting ready to this agentic world. And frankly, intents do make a lot of sense for the agentic world. So, guys, we're gonna take a quick break, quick pause, roll back into this. We got Kane ready to come back in the back. We're gonna get started with Kane, guys. See you in just a second. All right, welcome back, Rollup TV. We've got Kane. Kane, good to see you, man.
Hey, yeah, good to see you too.
Nice studio. I see you've done some upgrades.
Yeah. We used to do it downstairs. We've got 2 floors in the office. We had a place downstairs, and we moved it upstairs and improved the surroundings a little bit.
We saw you showing off the guitar behind the scenes.
Yeah, I've got a guitar back there. I've got more guitars in my house. So usually if I do a podcast in my house, I've got like a Moog one as well back there. So any music people are like, ooh, that's cool.
Well, dude, let's not bury the lead here. You wrote an article on paragraph.com, which may be my first time even seeing that site. So props to you for introducing me. It looks like a mirror-esque site, like a Web3 kind of blog.
Yeah, so I got rugged by Mirror last week or 2 weeks ago. I think Mirror pivoted into Paragraph, or it's evolved into that or something. So Mirror is being shut down and moved into Paragraph. So,
well, the title is Infinix is inevitable and INX is coming. And my biggest takeaway from the entire article was the Gainsey poll of have you tried using Infinix? 23 votes, 91% said no, while everyone else is complaining about crypto UX. Meanwhile, you've done your part. The first time that we had you on talking about Infinix was well over a year ago. Basically, the theme was, guys, we can't just have all the trading activity and all the new people come onto Binance. It's just not going to work. We need to make a DeFi UX that is better than a centralized exchange, that feels better, that operates better, and it's all DeFi. And needless to say, you spent the last 18 months doing that. Thing is, you told me, or you put a tweet, or I was texting with you, and you were saying that you still hadn't reached product market fit. This may have been 6 months ago. So something changed in the last 6 months, because now Infinix is inevitable.
So I think that we are just on the edge, like the start of the curve, right?
Okay.
For product market fit, where we're seeing both internally, like within our team, and also within like the patron cohort, right? We've got this patron cabal group of like 500-600 people who are like our early testers. We're starting to see this loop of like, they're using it more and more as their daily sort of crypto interface, right? The way that they're interacting with crypto. I think the big shift was like adding an extension, but also the perps interface is very good. So not everyone's a perps trader, but if you are, it's a very good interface. And then the platform itself. The gas abstracted, token swapping, bridging, etc. When you add the core functionality of like trading and an extension so you can interact with dApps, that platform stuff starts to really shine. Before we just had the platform, but you couldn't go and use dApps, and that it didn't really land.
Yeah, because you have to go to the platform to use the applications, and the user journey has been so entrenched for all of us. Like you just go to Aave, you just go to the DEX aggregator, et cetera. All right,
Exactly.
so let's go through this then, because I kind of like, we can make this like the Infinix token, INX, everything that you need to know, kind of get a deeper understanding here. Maybe let's start with this idea of the super app. And then that kind of goes into what you were saying with this browser extension, leading into the token and the sale and these things.
Yeah, so the super app thesis is basically this idea that centralized exchanges are the best UX that we have in crypto today, and the only way that we're going to be able to replace them or displace them is if we build something that feels like that feels like a centralized exchange but is on chain, uses DeFi. And so what does that mean? It means you need to be able to buy any token. You need to be able to trade perps. You need to be able to, do borrow lend. You need to have like confidence in the custody model, et cetera, et cetera. And you have to just be able to log into it on any device, right? So that thesis, I think, has emerged over the last 2 years and is getting more powerful. And there's a lot of projects that are trying to take that on. The form factor of an on-chain super app, I think, will be the dominant form factor over the next 3 to 5 years. But there's a lot of different ways you can approach it. People are trying to do like pure mobile app approach. Some people are doing web app. What we've realized is that we kind of need all of the different form factors. We need an extension. We need a web app. We need a mobile app. We need mobile responsive design. We need all of these different things to make this work. And we've finally landed all of them now. We've got an extension that's going to roll out to everyone, in the next week or so.
Very cool. I'd love to hear more about INX in particular, how it's integrated into Infinex, and you also talked about how patrons weren't necessarily the right form factor for what this value accrual mechanism could be. You ended up, transitioning that to what a more fungible token looks like. Why were patrons wrong? Why is INX the correct?
The correct
As
approach.
patron holders, sir.
Yes.
Must mention there, a little disclosure.
Disclaimer:
Yeah,
we are
exactly.
patron holders.
Both
We are
patron holders.
incentive aligned.
Yeah, so I think the patron was designed for distribution. We did it effectively an ICO back in September of last year, but it was an NFT mint, not an initial coin offering. But in principle, the approach was the same. We wanted to sell tokens to everyone at the same price, and not have a seed round that was fully spoken for by Dragonfly or something like that, right? We wanted to let everyone have a chance to get access to the token at the same price. But ICOs back then were probably on the edge of the risk curve, and so it made more sense to do an NFT mint. The problem with NFTs is they're sort of a cursed asset class, and so there's something to be said for and I say that I've got a lot of different NFTs. Many
My
of them
penguins are in the little igloo right now, and they're quite cold, man.
It's brutal. It's brutal out there in Penguin Land. But yeah, so we did this thing with NFTs. I think in the end, what we will get out of it is that the kind of barriers to entry actually end up being quite powerful, because it forced people to really understand. And so we didn't have many tourists. There weren't many people like, oh yeah, let me just go to Binance and buy the token and dump it, or perps or whatever. You had to go to Blur or OpenSea, figure out what is this thing, why should I own it. There's a bit of lore behind it. So I think we made it much harder, and so the people who became patrons genuinely understood the project, understood what we were trying to do. But having high barriers to entry for accessing a token is not the best approach long term, right? So we eventually realized about 6 months ago, we're like, this is just not going to scale. I think at the moment there are 900 patron holders. It's about 3,000 that are in the escrow contract. So people could choose lockups in the patron sale. So a lot of people are still in the escrow contract, but genuine liquid holders of this NFT, there are 900 people, which is bad even by NFT standards. So we just don't have wide distribution is the end result. And so it's okay, let's do a token. If we're going to do a token, what should it look like? How should we distribute it? We've had some really interesting information come out, from watching what Meg, and Monad have done. So yeah, we've got a plan for how we distribute the token now and how we get it launched.
And not just what Meg, and Monad have done, but what you have done with SNX and synthetics too, right? I'm sure there's plenty of learnings as a result of that. Anything that you've taken into account? What could have gone well? What could have gone better? What didn't go so well that now you've implemented into what you're thinking for INX?
So I think one thing that we definitely will not do is an airdrop.
Wasn't that the title of the stream today? ICOs versus airdrops?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think so. Here, I'll give you this is the so I wrote that blog post. I think there were 10 different versions, because we were using it as the kind of framework for us to dial in exactly how we were going to approach this. What was the distribution of crates? Who was it going to? All of this stuff. So this blog post was one of the most painful blog posts I've ever written. It took 2 weeks and just a lot of thrashing to get there. But there's no airdrop. But there is in crates INX vouchers. So I'll give you the two, and we tried both versions of this in the blog post, and one didn't land that well, and the other one really lands, right? So we'll try it in real time here, right? So, imagine, Andy, I'm saying to you, okay, come and connect your X account to Infinex, connect your Telegram account, you're a patron, so you get a bonus, and we're going to give you, I don't know, 50,000 INX, right? So it's going to be $3,000. And you're like, okay, cool, great. Awesome. That
Yeah.
sounds good, right?
Okay.
The alternative is come and connect your X account, connect your Telegram, connect your existing Hyperliquid account, right? Or import a wallet, start doing some activity, and we're going to distribute crates. And in some of those crates, there are vouchers that give you the opportunity to buy the Infinex token at a 10 million FDV.
Oh, oh, that's interesting.
And so you're like, which is like on paper worse, like clearly worse, not as positive EV as the airdrop of free tokens,
Right.
but your brain clicks into a different gear of like, wait, you're telling me I get to buy this token for
Just
like,
start gambling. You just want you just full gamble mode. It's just
you're like, okay, that's 100x right there
yeah,
at the
yeah,
current
yeah,
at the current price, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So all of a sudden you're like, wait, you're giving me a chance to have a 50x, return, and all I got to do is find these vouchers, and it just shifts your versus like, oh yeah, you're giving me some free tokens, which I'm going to jeet straight away.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to care about it, and I have no skin in the game. I'm not, buying them. There's no risk for me, etc.
And I wouldn't cheat them because I don't like it, Kane. I would cheat them because I got income tax that I have to pay.
Sure.
It's
Yeah,
like
exactly.
if
Yeah.
you do an investment, there becomes a long-term cap gain structure that incentivizes you quite literally not to sell. Like, obviously within some given parameters, but I mean, there's other reasons, but as an American, airdrops are really not that great.
No,
They just,
it's
just
and
a line item.
I was talking to Luca about this as well, right? And like we saw this when we did the Pudgy airdrop. We did a Pengu airdrop to everyone, right? And we watched this in real time because we have like real time data. You could see the stream of every single person that was like claim Jeet, and Infinex is so easy to use.
Yeah,
you didn't need
it's
to have
so
gas
easy
or
click.
call or
Yeah,
like we just
yeah,
made
yeah,
it like ultra. I was like, I jokingly said like we should have just had one button, which was like just like claim and Jeet, right? Like why make people press two buttons? And it was like 95% of people just were like max sell, right?
Yeah, man.
And then I came over to the other side of the room because we have like our engineering team and our like marketing comms ops teams are separated by like a staircase in the room. So we call it the DMZ. And I went over to the other side of the DMZ and I was like, hey, we need to get a list of all these people that are selling so that we can punish them later. And my head of engineering was like, "What? We're punishing people? What's going?" And I was like, "Did you just sell your airdrop?" And he's like, "Yeah, I did." And I was like, "Dude, come on." Even people in the room, they were like, just like, "Gee."
Yeah. Okay. So just to put some numbers behind this, 100% of the INX supply goes to the patrons. There are 100,000 patron NFTs. There'll be 10 billion INX tokens. So 100K INX per patron. This includes the U patron holders as well, who will get, which is like the vested ones. They'll get a 1 to 10 INX to U patrons ratio. The Infinex Treasury still has 33% of the supply. And basically, still the primary way to access the token is to be holding the NFTs. It'll be a 1 to 100,000 drop, as I just mentioned. And you'll get to keep the NFT, which will convert to a PFP, kind of like Kaido style, if you will. And then there's also going to be a sonar sale. But before we get to the sonar sale, the decision that you guys made was to do this crate run idea instead of an airdrop. And the incentive structure was such that like you want someone like me to come in, plug in my wallets, plug in my Hyperliquid stuff, plug in my Twitter, and start to actually use the platform as my main hub of DeFi transacting, to be able to earn different crates and earn the ability to have this early investment opportunity, which feels like a jackpot. And it kind of also is reminiscent of like monad boxes in a weird way too. And so like that structure was just clearly more appealing than just like, hey, Andy, here's a couple grand, like sell it for your tax purposes and then move on and not use my platform.
Exactly. And, you give people an airdrop and there's no, the challenge is, right? You give people an airdrop and make them jump through hoops, like opening boxes over the course of 3 days. And, no one understands what the boxes
and
are.
Tunes is at our happy hour in New York, like last week, claiming the fame for it. He's like, dude, that was all me. Just, thank me for it, man. I'm like, bro, like.
Yeah, and you know, like it was fun. My kids enjoyed
was fun.
right?
Yeah.
My kids have pudgies and they enjoyed it. But my daughter, the second day, was raging because she got less tokens than her brother, and she has more pudgies, and she's like, "This makes no sense." So even an 8-year-old was like, "What is this nonsense? Like, why are you doing RNG on these boxes? Like, just like put the tokens in the box, bro." Like, so I think I think there was a bit of like frustration of you've got to do this stuff which doesn't do anything, doesn't help Monad in any way, a bunch of hoops, like connecting stuff. Like, where was the connectivity to actually, you know, helping the network launch or
Yeah.
whatever? Like, and so it feels just disconnected, and it's like this performative thing. We genuinely believe that we have a good platform, and you know, one of the interesting things is we sponsored Gainsey's stream, right? And Gainsey started using the platform, and I watched in real time as he was like, "Holy shit, this is actually really good! Like, what have I been doing with my life?" He's like, "I'm over here using Phantom and like moving Sol and paying gas, and like I can just click a button and buy Zcash." And I was like, "Yes, exactly, right." But the problem is, everyone on crypto Twitter is like attention poor. Hard to get, you know, hard to get cut through with them. The noise floor is really high. So we're like, okay, we will give you access to the token. We'll give you some free stuff, prizes, you know, some NFTs, whatever. But in order to do that, you have to use the platform.
Yep.
And you know, if you don't use the platform, we can never show you that it's good, right? So
Yep.
we could do an airdrop to 100,000 people, and 98,000 of them would dump the token and never look back. And you know, for what it's worth, I do think there is some sense to that, right? Like to those airdrops, because at least those 98,000 people are like, well, I'm not going to FUD them on the timeline.
Yeah,
Right? They gave me
exactly.
free money.
Yeah.
So it's like, whatever. Like, you know, I've been calling it like the CT mafia, right?
Yeah, it's like a hush hush. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a nice project there. Be a shame if I burned it down, sort of thing, right? And it's like, here's a sack of cash. And like, yeah, you're a good kid. Go get out of here. And it's like that's what it's become, right?
Yeah,
It's become
100% agree.
kind of blood money, which is fine. You know, incentives evolve over time, right? And that's where the incentives have evolved to. So again, I'm like, sure, you can have your blood money. We'll give the CT mafia their tokens, right? But before we give them to you, just use the platform once, bro. Like, just like create an account, import one wallet. Like, it's not that hard. And then if you hate it or you don't care or whatever, you can cheat the tokens and move on. But like, I'm not going to just give people tokens without getting them to at least try it.
Yeah. I think that's yeah. I mean, look, I'm stoked because I've used it multiple times, not in the last, let's say, quarter or two. So I have not seen like the updated UX, but I think like from a 5 to 6 year on-chain DeFi user's perspective, it's more kind of about my habitual kind of thing. Like I have massive OPSEC and like security paranoia from surviving for 6 years. So I have my sites bookmarked. I have my using like the apps that I use. I have the chains that I use, and I have the devices that I use, and that's it. And any point of going elsewhere, there has to be like this massive chance of return for me to do it. Because it's like I have my habits, and I know what's safe, and I know what's smart, and like that's what I'm doing. And honestly, I don't love it. Like I used to just go ape into any smart contract at any time and just go for it. And you and I talked about this in Hong Kong, how like the meme coins changed the market from like who can be earliest to like who actually has some idea of alpha and has done some research and and anyhow. So I think it's a lot about.
So let me ask you this though, right? Like when Rabby came out, so presumably you were a MetaMask user.
Yeah, of course.
So when Rabby came out, did you try Rabby? When
I did not until about a year. I tried it once. I instantly converted over, and I've never gone back.
Interesting. Okay, so it took you a year for you to be like, all right, this has got enough Lindy, or like
my friends suggest it, yada yada. I see the UX. I saw some improvements on there, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna try this out. And then once I tried it, I was like, okay, this is just
better.
Then
so this is kind of the situation we're in, right? We're in that like Rabby MetaMask moment of like, how do we incentivize people to try the thing so that they go, oh wow, You faded Ravi for a year.
Well, if it's that good, Kane, and you're giving me the option to buy it at 10 mil val, and this thing is an absolute ripper, then it's like, all right, like I'm in. You know what I mean?
Fine.
It's like,
Yeah.
so
Yep.
I think the philosophy's right. Let's keep rolling through this though. So you guys will also do a sonar sale. Again, this is the distribution that you guys wanted. You know, coming from the NFTs, there's not that much info about it quite yet, but maybe you can just give us anything that's not in there or any ideas that you have about this.
Yeah. So, again, in the patron sale, we had about 3,000 people that participated. It was pretty small. It was more like an NFT mint, right? NFT mints, you get a few thousand people, and then it takes a bit of time for distribution to happen. Sonar, obviously, Mega ETH had something like 50,000 wallets participate and like 150,000 people KYC, just an order of magnitude or two more, right? So we think that there is an opportunity to, before we do TGE, when there's kind of maximum interest, to give people a chance to buy the token again, right? The thing we have to dial in is like pricing and how many tokens do we sell. Obviously, again, there's data that is emerging in real time, like Monad's pricing versus Mega ETH, and Mega ETH being 20x oversubscribed versus like a different mechanism that's not an auction. Like, there's a lot of different ways that you could cut this. So we haven't yet locked down exactly how we're going to do it, but the goal is get, a lot more people exposure to the INX token before TGE.
Yep. Makes sense. Yeah. So I mean, not that that's not the interesting part, but we got to come back to this crates, because I'm reading this more now, and you're basically taking the gambler out of all of us and saying, go gamble, guys. Like, good luck. You're going to give away hyper NFTs, pudgy penguins. There's a chance to buy, with the INX vouchers, there's a chance to buy the token at $1 million FTV, not 1, all the way up to 500 million. Obviously, I assume there'll be somewhat of a normal distribution curve, with the majority being maybe in the 300 range, 250, or maybe even closer to the 500 range. And so how do I maximize my crates? Like I just go all in on crate maximization. What's the strategy here?
So we did this with Crate Run. So we had a campaign called Crate Run, which was a TVL campaign, late last year, which I think was the most fun, interesting thing that we've done so far. And people loved it. The OG Crate Runners, still talk about it. It was a very fun campaign, and it was simple. You just, the more TVL you put in, the more crates you got. But inside the crates, we had this mechanic where you could get basically bonuses, like TVL bonuses, right? And so it created this very interesting race condition where, like, the earlier you were, you got compounding bonuses, you got more crates, and it became a very interesting game theory. We've tweaked that a little bit with this, where this is not about TVL. We have 500 mil of TVL now, so it's not, more TVL is not really useful for us. What we're looking for is as many people as possible to try the platform. So we're trying to make it very easy for people to bring their existing seed phrases and import them. So, you got a Ravi seed phrase, you can import it, you can use it in the Infinex extension. If you have historical trading activity on perps, whether it's like Hyperliquid or GMX or synthetics or whatever, you'll get rewarded for that. So there's a whole bunch of retroactive crates that you'll get. And then there's also going to be crates for using the platform today. So the first kind of campaign is going to be centered around perps, but eventually we will have a swaps campaign, we'll have an NFT campaign, we'll have a bunch of different campaigns for different features within the platform. So this is not the only time we're going to do crates. It's probably pre-TG the best time, I would say, which is kind of intentional, to really drive people to create an account, get a wallet that they can start using.
Man, this fees paid in ETH for chain usage for me is going to be, oh my gosh.
I know, right?
I remember mid 2020 looking at it, and it was like 50 ETH, and that was like 5 years ago. So, I mean, we're in there. And then, okay, so there's the CT Mafia. By the way, your writing style is just, I mean, it's just I mean, come on, dude. Like, is this a real industry? Like the bot extermination, the smelly old crates, the what if you don't trade perps line? I mean, come on, man. It's just
Yeah.
so. Will spot volume on Hyperliquid and perps X count, or just perps volume? Because I feel like that's a little bit unfair if it's just perps volume.
Yeah, that's a good point. We have a bunch of data sets that we're curating right now. There are some challenges, I guess, with the difference between perps and spot volume and how different fee structures, et cetera. So we don't want anything to be gameable, I guess. So we will be looking at that and figuring out how we dial it in. I'm trying to get like OG DYDX volume, and Antonio's ghosting me. So like hopefully he sees this eventually. I don't know what he's doing, living over there in Cosmos land, but yeah, hopefully we can get, we're just going to get a pile of perps, legacy perps data, and then we'll slice it up and figure out how we distribute it.
Yep. Very cool. And then I guess the last thing that we got for you is just like timeline here. I mean, anything that you can share with regards to like what does your Q4 look like here?
So I think first thing, again, this is all leading up to TGE, right? So the step one is do this big release and get the crate run campaign going, so we can start to get some traction. The anecdotal evidence we have from like new users who've never used Infinex coming in and importing a wallet is that it's fairly compelling when they see it. So we're going to be watching very closely for how traction goes in that first period, and the best vouchers, the cheapest vouchers will be in the first maybe few days or first week. So there's a strong incentive to come in and like not
Move
fade
quick.
this and wait. Yeah, exactly. So that's probably the most alpha, I think.
Yeah, that
right?
is the most alpha. We could have just had this part of the conversation, and then I
just
would
like
have
cut it out. Yeah, exactly.
No, I'm just kidding.
So that's probably the first 2 weeks, right? Once we've got a level of traction there where we've kind of maximized attention, maximized mind share, then we'll do the sonar sale. So that takes us into sometime in December. Once we've done the sonar sale and that's wrapped up, which we're going to try and do hopefully in about a week, keep it fairly tight. We don't want it to drag on for a long time. Then we'll be ready for TGE.
Yeah,
So
wow.
TGE,
So we're moving quick here.
it's quick. Like,
Yeah.
it could be late December, it could be early Jan. No one really knows right now. So if you're betting on that poly market thing, unfortunately, I got no info for you. It's still a coin toss right now.
Very, very cool. I mean, this has been what, like 2-ish years in the making since you announced
Yeah.
this?
Yeah.
Probably been working on it for 3.
I think like the first inkling that I had that I was going to do this, right? That I was going to like do a new project. And it was funny, actually. I tried to do it as a anon, because it was going to be just a front end for synthetics, right? So I was like, I don't want to have all of the baggage of like me doing stuff. I'm just going to come in and build this thing, get a small team of like 2 or 3 people, do it as an anon team, release it, and just see what happens. That was in April of 2023. So we're going. I woke up. I had a dream, and the dream was like, I've gotten this wrong. Like synthetics, DeFi, like decentralization, and I woke up from this dream, and I was like, I'm gonna solve this problem a different way. And yeah, that was a long time ago now, 2.5 years.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thanks for spending some time with us. It's been fun just kind of watching the Infinex patrons get traded on Blur and OpenSea and not really have any inkling to sell at all. Just been kind of like, well, I don't know what you guys are doing, but there's something at the end of this tunnel.
Yeah.
And it's probably going to be better than whatever you guys are doing. So yeah, thanks for the full breakdown. And I'm just honestly stoked to have Andre building Flying Tulip, Michael from Curve launching Yield Basis, you launching Infinex. There was just a lot of for lack of a better term, crash outs from DeFi summer, just for a variety of reasons. And it's just good to have, the boys back in town. You know what I mean?
100%. Yeah. Feels like it's cranking again.
Yeah. All right, guys. Great episode.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Ken.
Alrighty, guys. That was Kane from Synthetics, guys at OG. New type. Does Infinix have any social aspects in the apps, such as Trollbox, talk to other user platform? Never use it, but I'm definitely gonna try it. I don't think they have a Trollbox, but they should be working on some social layer apps. That would be a good idea. Good call
Definitely
out.
try it.
New type. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, try it once this crate thing goes live, you'll be incentivized to try it. So,
Well, Crate
Yeah.
Run has been live for a little while.
correct.
So-
But once like the announcement and stuff goes live, it basically you have to you got to send it live quickly. Like you have to join and claim your crates and start participating as fast as possible to actually get the biggest chance to get the lowest FTV.
Yeah, Kane's got you going on some mental gymnastics, which is pretty fun.
It's
Pretty
a
cool to
lottery. It's just gambling. It just gets you gambling.
see. Yeah, it's like a lottery raffle. You know, you play fun game, win fun prizes.
100%. 100%. So, all right, we got
And we got a
Beto
fun
back.
one.
Let's bring him up.
Surprise guest here,
Yep.
Head of
Should be fun.
Dev Connect.
Yeah, the man, the myth himself, the man of Dev Connect, the Argentinian. How are you, Fede?
All good. You guys, are we going to watch Boca?
Yes,
on
brother.
Sunday?
Yes.
Let's
Are-
go.
you're a Boca fan, right?
Yes. I'm a
Okay,
big
so
Boca fan.
Boca all the way. I'm gonna pick up a jersey, bro.
Cool. It's gonna be fun.
Good, man. Good. Well, man, I know you're slammed. It's been a crazy couple, probably weeks for you leading up to Dev Connect. I mean, the whole crypto economy is coming down to Argentina, Argentina. I was reading one of your threads and it said, I love my country. I'm grateful to the people's representatives for selecting me, and I'll do whatever it takes to defend our nation's interests. This was recently after you posted these photos of you at the Senate. Maybe you could just talk us through, like, what are the national interests of Argentina? How can crypto be a part of that? What are you representing for your country?
Good question. So, I'm 37 years old. My father always tells me I'm like 70 years old because of the amount of stupid, ungood things I have done in my life. When you grow up, you change your ideas. When I was very young, I was liberal. Then I was more like, because of university, more like center left or even too leftist. And now I'm more like a pro-technology. I'm a businessman. I'm a pragmatic person. And I think Argentina is a country of immigrants. In that sense, it's very similar to the US. And I think it was always a place for people, Jewish, poor Italians, Spanish people, Germans, that came here looking for a new life, similar to the US. So they wanted a country where they had freedom, they had the ability to build companies, they had the ability to believe in whatever they wanted, and to have a peaceful life. So from my point of view, Argentina is a country that should be proud of its West origins and values. But it's also a Latin American country. We're more chaotic. We have like a special sauce of like, we like to fight. We're very passionate about anything. Yeah, I think the interest of my country is the interest of defending the values of freedom, the values of democracy, on defending the values of being able to create a company and have a prosperous life. In that sense, it's similar. It has some differences, but it's pretty similar to the regions of the US.
And how does
Let us
how
be
does crypto
free.
help with that? Like, how does crypto is very, like, it's got libertarian, very freedom oriented, right? There's a lot of overlap with some of the values that you describe. You're obviously building a lot of cryptographic technologies here. How have you been able to use and leverage the technology and the cryptography that you've developed at Lambda and Aligned? How have you been able to use this to advance Argentina's interests?
So, as I said before, during my life, I grew and changed my ideologies or ideas, as most people. Nowadays, I don't consider myself a leftist or a libertarian. I think I'm more like a technologist, accelerationist. And I always try to convince people in the left and in the right that this is good tech. This is tech for the people. For example, my mother, she was very opposed. She's a hardcore Christian, she didn't like that I work in crypto because she heard about FTX, and she kept telling me, like, why do you work on an industry that steals from the poor, that steals from the common people? She's a person that believes that one needs to do things that help others. And I tried to explain her that crypto gives power to the individual and to communities that want to be able to have their own money, that they don't depend on somebody else screwing others. In Argentina, we had huge issues with the banks in 2001. Multiple times we had not only issues with inflation, the banks seized the money with governments from common people. In comparison to other places in the world, this created a more leftist movement against central banks, against the banks, against corporations. Now, with our current president, this same anti-authoritarian or centralist type of way of ruling countries comes more from the right. But the core idea is that I think you always need to convince people on Argentina is in a place where people from the left and the right are pro-crypto in general, because it has given rights to common people and to organizations. I couldn't pay salaries at one point because I couldn't do exports. I couldn't get my money in the bank. The first time I created Lambda, is a crazy story, and there's a co-founder I had at the beginning. He only stayed for 1 year in Lambda. We went to one of the biggest banks, it's a Spanish bank, to create a bank account. And I was making like 15K per month. That in Argentina is a lot of money. And I went with my flip-flops. I always have flip-flops. And I went there with my this is how I normally look. I'm not in a suit. I'm like a typical with a short. When I go and start like, hey, can you open a bank account for my new company? And the guy managing the bank told me, he started laughing and said like, yes, you're making that amount of money. And I was 24 years old. And he's like 25, 24. He's like, yeah, and I am Diego Armando Maradona. Like, there's no chance you're making this amount of money. And they didn't create the bank account for me. Like, they didn't want to create the bank account. That's crazy. Like, they didn't want to serve a new customer. So I was very pissed off. So it's a place where naturally crypto grows because people need it. There's a lot of OGs that have, even Americans. I know Brian Armstrong from Coinbase had worked here some time ago. That's something I would like to talk another day. And I think he met Bitcoin here. I'm not sure, but he already knew about Bitcoin here. So there's a lot of people, Americans, Chinese people, had to do commerce with Argentinians that were blocked to do exports and got paid in Bitcoin. So,
man, you had this viral post in October 2024. It was I'm going rogue. And I know that was a name of a certain idea, but since then, it seems like you've been on an absolute tear with EtherX, with Aligned, Lambda, now with this Crecimiento, happenings and debates. Man, like what happened? You went into wartime mode. Fede went full wartime mode over the last year, and has, you've gotten a lot done. Talk to us a bit about your mentality and how you approach work. And then let's get into some of the details about EtherX, about DevConnect, about Crecimiento, and just kind of what's happening.
Sure. I don't think I went on war mode. Like some people tell me that every once in a while. I think if you meet me, I'm a pretty peaceful person. I can debate very harsh, like aggressively, and I can have very strong opinions. But I also work with people that are very different. I have friends that are Muslims. I have friends that are Jews from Israel. I have friends from the Vatican. I have friends that are hardcore Peronists on the left. I have partners I have companies with them. I have companies with people that are extreme libertarians. Like RJ, when he was very young, he used to be RJ from Align. He was part of the small movement that Milei created. The RJ, when he was very, very young, I don't know how his mother was not worried, gifted books to Milei. So we can do this because we're very flexible. We're pragmatic people, but we also have opinions. I can explain you what we have been doing, but what we're trying to do is raise the bar of what crypto is. I think it's going to become more professional. There's going to be more corporations, more institutions coming in. And I think we need to clean a little bit the mess that crypto created, especially after DeFi summer, where we lost a lot of the cypherpunk original values. The the interesting things that brought me to crypto. Like I was a hardcore open source fan. I have been in open source movement since 2003, 2004, 2003, sorry, with Linux, OpenBSD, FreeBSD, then with Rust, Erlang. I have been always, my life is this. So I don't know, I have opinions. Like if you go and speak with people like Linus Torvald, Theo Rat, the creator of OpenBSD, different people in the programming language community, they all have opinion. If they're known for having strong opinions. I don't know why. Sometimes nowadays in crypto, having opinion is seen as something too chaotic, or there's too much like kumbaya vibes where things cannot be debated. And I think that's pretty bad. I can give you a concrete example. When we started the line, we wanted to work on privacy. You know what VCs told us on some people I cannot mention that are pretty important when you do a token launch. Told us like, don't touch privacy. 1 week ago, I was like, the only thing you have to do is privacy. I'm like, dude, this is bananas. Like this shows you that sometimes public markets, this happens also in traditional businesses. They're so, the feedback loop is so fast that you cannot think on the long term. And if you think about very successful companies, for example, Stripe, I'm pretty sure Stripe is a private company. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Or other companies are very successful like them. Valve, I'm a huge Valve fan. I think Valve is about to win against Microsoft in the gaming industry. And it's because they're private. They can think in the long run. When you have to do things for the next quarter or things for the next pump on the token, sometimes that's bad. Like that's bad for the stakeholders. So what I'm trying to do is like, I believe I'm more like a traditional capitalist. I try to give opinions in the things I believe, as most people do in open source. I don't think I'm in war mode in any way, but that's how I see it. Maybe other people see it.
Yeah. No, definitely. I mean, okay, so you open up the floor to talk about this Crecimiento debate. You know, you tagged us in this tweet, and it seems like there's some differing opinions as to what the future of Argentinian crypto looks like, how you want to be approached in your home country. What is going on? What are you not happy about? What needs to be changed? What is going on that is positive? What needs to be looked at for some room for improvement? Where is there a disconnect happening here with Crecimiento?
I will answer very clearly. I don't want to avoid the question, but I also want to talk about other things. I think there's many interesting things that we're doing during DevConnect that I would like to share that are very positive. And I don't want to be seen only as a debater. I'm a builder. I build things, and I think people respect us for the things we create. However, we also have opinions. I will share my opinion on this subject very briefly. So first of all, I have deep respect for the people. The Crecimiento is a movement, a co-work space. I have deep respect for the Argentinians, on international people that have been going there. I went a few times. I didn't go more times because I traveled a lot until I came back 2 months ago to Argentina. So I'm in favor of movements that gather people around to work on crypto. I'm in favor of people helping other people to raise money and to create new companies. So I cannot be against that. Unless I was jealous or retarded, that I'm not. I cannot be. You're an idiot if you're against that. Like, I'm in favor of that. I have friends working there. There's a few companies, I can list them, but I don't know if they will like it, that work in Crecimiento co-work. Diego Fernandez, that is a friend we have a company with him. He also was part of that. And we have differences, but normal differences like the ones I can have with you, Andy, like nothing crazy. So I want to make clear, I'm in favor of all that. Okay, that's the first part. Do you have any question on that part? Because now
No. Understood.
Perfect. So the part I have a difference. Is that, look, Argentina is a sovereign country. We're a G20 country with almost 50 million people. And we're, as most countries that have democracies, divided. There's people that vote for the left and people that vote for the right. And as I said before, I believe crypto. I think I believe like I'm a Christian. Like I'm a hardcore Christian. The last few years, after all the crazy shit that happened to me, I became more. I believe more. During some period of time, I was more than I was not sure if I believe in God or not. Now I believe. Every year I become older, and this is a process that most people go through. I believe more in God and in religion in general. And I realized that we have to convince others. Like that's part of preaching, going on getting people in. And I think we need to do that, like especially in Argentina, because we need crypto. So based on that, I think you cannot do things that hurt the long-term process of convincing people. And that's my big difference. And I will be very concrete on what I mean by this. Imagine I go to the US as an Argentinian, or I go to France, or I go to Mexico, and I raise money in a Panama entity, millions of dollars. I tell people there's already 3 raise already prepared to be done during DevConnect to raise a few $1 million. You write documents and you say literally that this is going to be done for lobbying. There's the item explaining how the lobby is going to be done, to change regulation, to create an economic zone, to then launch a token. I mean, I don't know. I'm not against an economic zone, but I am very against people pushing very fast and very hard to do regulatory change that benefits themselves. And the reason is not because I'm against private people investing in something. I'm in favor of that. I'm against things that can turn bad very fast. I spoke with politicians. I was yesterday in the Senate. Like, these things are not public. I'm friends with people managing the Peronist political movement. I'm very close to people in the libertarian movement. I'm very close to what's called the radicals, like center left. I have friends all over the place. I cannot tweet these things. I have been working here and grew up here for 20 years. So I speak with them, and all of them are like, what the fuck is this delulu-ness? Like, this is very strange, and this is not the way to do things. So I tried to contact them, and I told them, like, dude, you cannot raise money from an outside entity to change local laws or regulation to then benefit from that regulation to launch a token. I called friends that were part of Crecimiento. I told them, like, dude, I have journalists asking me about this, and they're saying I am in favor of this. They even people use my name. So I'm not pissed off, but I think this is very short-term sighted.
Wow.
Do you think?
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot to sort through here, but it sounds like there's bits and pieces that could be done better, and if they were to do them in a way in which it was for Argentina by Argentinians, right? That would then have the citizens of the country enacting the local laws rather than bringing this outside entity to come in and try to extract value from the country, right? Yeah. Because like you said, there's value in an economic zone, right? And so, like, if you were going to do this, right? It sounds like, you know, what we've been in the US, right? We're starting to see some regulation. And so that seems to be very positive. We're establishing, you know, stablecoin regulation in the Genius Act, the Clarity Act in the US. And so you're not against regulation, and you're not against an economic zone. You're against foreigners coming into your country, telling you how to run things, and then launching a token for their benefit.
Not even foreigners. I like foreigners. I actually am closer to the American values of business than the Argentinian ones. I'm deeply thankful to the US, and especially to the San Francisco area. I grew up, I'm a big fan. I have been like in love with San Francisco, on its history, its people. I'm thankful. It's the people that helped me the most in my career. I love everything that was created in San Francisco. Then we can have differences. Now it changed a little bit, but I love everything. When I was young, on the back of my bed, I had a Berkeley, the University of Berkeley on the bear, the yellow one with blue, because I was a big BSD fan and computer scientist. I went to MIT. The first time I went with 17 years old, I went to MIT and I took a very nerdy, ugly picture with big glasses in the MIT. I loved MIT. I love the type of jokes they made. They put cars on the top of the MIT. I love that things. I'm an engineer my father's an engineer. I love builders. I love that. So it's not even the fact that there are foreigners. I'm a nationalist, but I'm not against foreigners. Like, I don't see that as nationalistic. I actually want people to come and to invest. The problem I have is that if Argentinians or foreigners do this in a way that is short-term sighted, that looks from the outside, because it does look like that, and that's easy to check. A quick way of making a buck. Actually fucking up the possibility of creating good regulation. FTX tried to do this against. So I don't like that either. On this
it's just part. Yeah, it takes away from the actual quality builders that are trying to do real things and not just make a dollar. And so I'm sure we can hear their side of the story later on, and they may reach out to us after some of these clips and whatnot. Let's move on to some of the positive side here, guys. Ethrex, Dev Connect Buenos Aires. We got 13,000 people coming to Buenos Aires. I have lived there on and off for about a month or two in my life. I've really thoroughly enjoyed it, as well as being in Brazil, close by in Florianopolis. A lot of the Argentinian people come to Florianopolis in January, February, March to have their holidays. I've met tons of both types. Really, always had an amazing time. Fede, what does Dev Connect in Buenos Aires mean to you after all this time building out, the cyberpunk values of this industry? What are you most looking forward to? What does this really mean to you and the Lambda class team?
So first of all, I'm very proud and happy that Dev Connect is organized here. I think we Argentinians can be like me, a pain in the ass. We're proud of our country and proud of what we do, and we want like you to come to Boca. My other friends are from River, like Franal. It's like no, take them to River. Like we all want to show others. Like we're very like this come from Italian roots. Like we want to show. We want you to come to our house to meet our mothers, families. So I think we want to show the world on people, especially in crypto, that we are proud of who we are, but we also want to work with people from the outside. Argentina was disconnected. Big part of Argentina was disconnected from for too many years from the outside world. I think that's bad. Like I have a strong opinion. Like I think it doesn't matter if you're left or right. You have to work with the rest of the world. There's smart people all around the world, and we benefit with commerce and with working with people from the outside. So for me, the thing I'm most excited about the Connect is that we can show the talent that is in Lambda. Outside of that Lambda, there's like other companies. Some of them I don't have good relationships, and that's okay. But I'm proud of them existing. DeFi Wonderland, Open Zeppelin. There's a new company that I love the name. It's called Fat Solutions, like the concept of like the nerdy fat guy, and they're proud of it. They're working with Amin on privacy stuff. I met them the other day. So I want everybody to know these people. We have Mariano from Maker from Sky that works with Rune. Like there's so much talent that I'm proud that we have this talent, and I want to show it to the world. So I think it should be a moment to celebrate that Ethereum is huge. Like I know people that are not engineers or they don't know much about crypto. They took pictures of Vitalik running a few years ago in Argentina, in Buenos Aires. I'm pretty sure if you drop Vitalik in some cities in the world, he would, like, most people wouldn't know him. Here, people are like, they know him. They all see him as they see him as most people see me, as a neurodegenerative, crazy person that wants to make the world a better place and that is trying to come to their country to help. So I think that's what we want to show. Like that, there's a bunch of nerd and we want to celebrate our nerdiness and that we're happy about it.
That's incredible, man. I think, it shows that there's so much progress and potential in innovation. And what you're saying is that you've been able to harness this, and you're really looking at this technology and you're looking at making this a cultural hub because you see the potential in the technology. I think, there's other countries that suppress this and they try to fight it because there's so much of a blob. There's so much incumbent intermediaries that they stifle innovation for the sake of keeping their own power. Fede, I mean, you've been a part of like several different companies. I don't know if you would consider yourself a serial entrepreneur, but what are you up to these days? Like, what are you occupying most of your time with? What are you most passionate and excited about these days?
So yes, I am working on too many things. Yesterday we launched in IGO a website to launch games before Steam. An hour-long Metrovania that is going to be 8 hours long. We're going to launch it next in Android, iOS, Steam. We have I worked quite a bit in backends for games with big people, like big players. Alan, an American that is part of our company, he worked with all the big EA, Microsoft, everyone. He's helping us create games. So I'm very excited by the gaming division of Lambda. We're doing anime. We're doing so many things on the creative side of the world. We have actually a media I want to show you guys afterwards when you come here called 421. It's about live games, video games, tech, culture, books, so nerdy stuff. I'm a nerd, so I'm proud of my like left side of the brain nerd part, like similar to what you guys do. It's like explaining things, showing other people. It's culture. You guys do culture. Like you're a cultural movement. You try to have your opinion on how things are happening in the world. And then my more like like rational side of the brain, where we're doing cryptography. I'm super proud of the work we're doing on in Ethereum. I'm so thankful to the Ethereum Foundation. People have been very harsh from my point of view to the EF, especially at the beginning of the year. On the EF has been amazing with us. Like they help us. They made they like it's not easy to not be an American or an European in an industry where you're so far away. And I'm not saying this because I'm like a victim or people that are racist. I'm just saying like it's difficult. You have less money. You are from the outside, and it's good to have people that try to help new players to come in, and they help new play. They help. I don't know what other people can say. Like I can say they help us. They help us to connect with the correct people. We're working on what's called Lean Ethereum. Justin Drake, I think he has been speaking publicly quite a bit.
Yes,
I
yes.
really recommend you speak with him about the future of Ethereum. We're working there. We sent some of our cryptographers, mathematicians, and engineers
Beautiful.
to Cambridge. We're doing IDREX, our L1 execution client. We're gonna do Rogue. Like that didn't stop. Like we are waiting for Fusaka. To go
Yes,
live.
it's coming.
Exactly. It's like a Rollup that is gonna, from my point of view, be we're doing the future of Ethereum a little bit before Ethereum. We're gonna add some privacy sauce over there. We won't be in charge of the token. I want the smart contract to be a native Rollup so that we don't control the multisig. It's like a fully cypherpunk thing, and I want other people to be in control of it. So what I am doing, I don't know, too many things. I can go through the field. Wait, I want to say we're working. There's going to be a huge announcement about stablecoins. And we're partnering up with a huge institution in Latin America to do railways of payments. Too many things. I cannot speak yet. It's going to be pretty big. But what we do, our specialty is with working with bigger players than us, on being loyal to them, on executing, on bringing people on board with tech, on culture.
Beautiful. Fede, we got to let you go, man. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you in Buenos Aires. We'll see you at the beautiful space that we have for the Lambda class and Rollup event on the 18th. We've got tons of signups already. Look forward to hanging out there. And man, it's going to be a great week.
Thank you so much. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak openly about things. I think you guys are killing it. I believe you're going to become the biggest media in crypto.
Bye, guys.
Sir. Thank you so much, Fede. We'll see you soon. We'll see you next week.
All right, buddy. Bye. Alrighty, guys, we got Sam coming up, partner at CMT Digital. They've just put through a massive fundraise. Let's get Sam up in the back and get started. It should be a great conversation. Guy is absolutely dialed in. $136 million fundraise during a drawdown. They've already deployed 25% of it. Should be a great conversation with Sam. Let's bring him up and let's get started. Sam, congrats on the fundraise, man.
Hey, thanks so much, Andy. Great to join you here. Long time listener, first time caller.
I love that saying.
I love it. It's a pleasure to have you, man.
Congrats, man. $136 million, 25% already deployed. Market's red today. I don't think your fund really cares. It's a 10-year, 20-year time horizon for a lot of these funds. Man, how did this happen?
Yeah, well, we've really got our partners to thank. We've raised 4 funds now and have had a remarkable number of investors from Fund 1 invest in all of our subsequent funds, and some new folks join us and trust us along the way. So without them, it's not possible. And as you said earlier, it's really a gift to have a long time horizon and get to develop really solid relationships with the founders that we back, and see incredible things play out over long time horizons, and we've been fortunate to be positioned with some really dynamic entrepreneurs that have made some awesome things happen, and so just thrilled to be able to continue to do that going forward here, and it's our largest fund to date. And some really seismic changes happening, at the government level, at the institutional readiness level, that just make me excited for this next chapter of crypto adoption.
I love it, man. I think You know, the U.S. is home to a lot of this innovation. We were just talking to Fede, the Argentina conference next week is also home to a lot of this. But you know, we were in New York for SmartCon last week, and it was the likes of Fidelity, BlackRock, the Fed, DTCC. Literally, we've been saying it, quadrillions in the room. We've surpassed trillions. And so, you know, as we start to bring these two worlds together, DeFi and Wall Street are converging. What's the thesis, right? We've been saying that, you know, 2026 is kind of like the institutional year, the year of the institutions. What do you think going forward? What are you guys most focused on at the fund?
Yeah. You know, I think like the table is set and it's really an execution game at this point. And, you know, it's really, I think everybody can see the long-term vision that, you know, financial assets, both, you know, public and private, will be tokenized. We had the pleasure of investing in, and we're still large investors in a company called Figure, founded by Mike Cagney, and he demonstrated in 2019 that there are real cost savings in originating home equity lines of credit on chain. You know, all the reporting is centralized in one place, and you can easily transact these digital assets. And he's just continued to realize more and more efficiencies by having these assets on chain. And so there are tangible, you know, cost benefits. And cost benefits are interesting because, you know, if you're operating on a lower cost structure than somebody, like fundamentally, you just kind of win, right? Because you can do things that they can't do. You can spend money that they can't. You kind of have more flexibility than they can. So, you know, it really is like a black hole, and all of finance is going to collapse into this, you know, on chain rails. But you know, that's an easy statement to make. The hard statement to make is, how is it going to happen? So we're looking for entrepreneurs that have a really unique lens and right to win and earned insight into how capital markets are going to come on chain. And so I think, you know, we're looking to partner with exceptional individuals that have a differentiated view on, you know, this long-term goal that we all feel convicted in. And whether it's somebody coming from, you know, traditional finance, or somebody that's grown up in the blockchain and digital asset space, I think there's like a unique, you know, lens by which these different types of entrepreneurs come into or look at you know, the adoption of crypto. And we are happy to take a look at, and ultimately we have invested in, you know, people coming from both ends of the spectrum. So
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's always a go-to-market question. And that is that's what gets me out of bed in the morning. Just, you know, hearing the kind of secrets that are hidden in plain sight that these entrepreneurs uncover to me.
Yeah, man. I mean, I feel like you know, you've kind of orbited around the new kind of categories that you guys are looking for. You've said that you expect one or two new categories to really emerge, you know, this cycle, quote unquote, or just kind of this time around. We see it each and every kind of bull cycle. Is there any early signals or market shifts that you're tracking right now that are defining the categories for the next 3 to 5 years? I mean, I think what you've said with regards to bringing capital markets on chain is probably the biggest one, this RWA tokenization kind of push. You know, is that it? Or is there any other categories that you guys are firmly kind of seeing that you have an edge in, or that you've developed a thesis in?
Yeah, we have long-term theses, research-driven theses that we've cultivated over several years, and we try to validate or invalidate, you know, based on new data that's coming to bear. I think that the, you know, yield generation space, I mean, I've heard it said that finance runs on NIM, and you know, there's so much to unpack there, but also new financial assets to be created that can only be made, you know, through tokenization. I think Athena started to define a category of, like, you know, tokenized structured products, and I think there's going to be a lot of innovation in that space. I don't know that many people are looking at that as an actual category in and of itself yet, but I think that's a space that we're very interested in and have made at least one investment into from Fund 4. I continue to think that the breadth and impact of the Genius Act is underappreciated actually by crypto natives. And the people that are actually funding these companies, and so I think the Genius Act could be the most powerful tool that the Treasury has in its arsenal for exporting U.S. Treasuries abroad, and also materially improving the life of somebody that's used to dealing with a highly volatile currency. Everybody's going down to Argentina this week and next week, and that is an economy that's afflicted by persistent inflation and has looked to crypto to solve a lot of issues. So I think now that it's kind of easier to export treasuries, it's actually a mandate of Treasury policy and the policy of the administration. I think we're going to see some really interesting companies emerge in that space that become like systemically important as well.
Definitely. I mean, that is the biggest unlock. I think just the clarity is changing. I mean, we've already seen it just with like traditional DeFi companies and investors. We've got the framework guys coming on a bit later, and they've been talking to us a lot just about how if the founder does not have a very clear business model, a clear revenue generation plan, a very clear and a well accounted for idea, there's just no way it's getting funded. And that is a seismic shift from 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And that is a result of, many factors. One being Hyperliquid coming out and saying, this is how we're going to do it. So if you guys aren't going to do it this way, well, then good luck keeping up, with us. Two being Trump and the administration and just all these regulatory clarity actions, coming about. And then three, I think just the market being overwhelmed with how many tokens there are. I mean, Pump Fun and the lowering the barrier to entry of token creation completely changed the way that people think about them, and I honestly are getting exhausted by them. And so, with this lens in mind, it does feel harder than ever to be a venture capitalist in crypto. While it is a 20-year bull cycle where we're entering, we believe that this year's the line in the sand for the industry. The career risk we feel like has been neutralized significantly. We feel like there's a lot of big swings that are possible to take. At the same time, the sophistication and the maturation of the industry does make it harder, meaning there's going to be winners and losers. I mean to say that it was always a layup back in 2018 to 2021 to invest, but it was less tokens, way less understanding of how everything worked behind the scenes, way less anti-VC rhetoric and more. And so for founders pitching you now with valuations still under pressure, what differentiates a compelling investment from one you'll pass on? Like, what are your 30-second filters? What are your must-haves for founders today?
Yeah, I mean, I think so we have a founder matrix that we score our founders on. Founder market fit, tenacity. What are their earned insights? What is their talent magnetism? Steve Jobs is obviously, they say that he had, kind of he was a cult of personality, but he had a magnetic reality distortion field around him, right? Where he was able to convince, crazy talented people to join him. You see that with Elon, see that with a lot of, the best investors or founders of the day. So it all comes back, and part of this is because it's an early stage investment, but even as we followed on to later stage investments in our portfolios, it always comes back to the founders. And so I think all the things that you had mentioned previously are things that, yes, we're absolutely looking at, but they can all be encapsulated in the founder. And really, we want to see somebody that walks the fine line of dreaming about building something that is truly world changing, but is taking the practical steps towards executing with a high, bias towards action.
Then what about more specifically around their economics and their business and that stuff? Like how like are you funding like what do you need to see from a founder to and from a like a deck slash really on this revenue idea or on this business model?
Yeah.
Like, what are you really looking for?
Yeah, I mean, I think they need to be using blockchain in a compelling way to, build a natural monopoly. Whether it's the network effects that can be, created by a blockchain, whether it's the cost structure that you're able to achieve, just better unit economics than other competitors that aren't using this technology yet. Those are the things that we look for in in like the financial vision. We like to a lot of my inspiration as an investor is taken from like 0 to 1 and some of the classic VC books. But I love hearing about the question that Peter Thiel would ask is what is something that is true to you that most people would disagree with, and it's those contrarian insights that provide you the basis for really asymmetric return profiles in investments. And those are like my favorite things to learn about. So it's really understanding, where the asymmetric risk profile in an investment lies. Yes, it may go to 0, but it could also go, 100x, 1,000x. And those are all based on, kind of earned or derived insights that oftentimes seem extremely contrarian. And so just training the muscle to kind of sprint towards those types of thinkers is really important. And then, ultimately we want to see defensibility around the business model, defensibility of, economics over time that lead to an enduring, potentially generational business. And we're going to get a lot wrong, and hopefully we get a few right along the way, and have been fortunate to get a few right along the way in the past. And it's been extremely rewarding to partner with the companies in this space, because I think by definition crypto is contrarian. I mean, less so now than it used to be. But Chris Dixon writes in his book that like crypto is very as disruptive as it can be, as a technology can be, because you are completely displacing legacy technology. We talk about the tokenization of finance. That means that the old rails are out and the old ways of doing business are out, and tokens and blockchains, public decentralized blockchains, are in. Like that's going to piss a lot of people off along the way. And we like those entrepreneurs that are unafraid to do that, because ultimately it's better for society.
Sam, man, we appreciate your time today. I know we got a little cut off here, a little short. It's been a busy day. We had special guests, etc. But we've been really holding off on writing checks from our fund. We just have like a prop cap fund, and basically like we're looking at the market right now, and there's tons of good ideas, but they're all in the spirit of the bull market. And I love it. I'm excited. Market doesn't look good today. It doesn't really matter. Bitcoin's, as long as Bitcoin's around 100K, people are going to be raising. I'm interested to invest again when Bitcoin's at 75K, 70K. We see a bit of a decimation, a bit of a reset, and then we actually get some new founders in that are not just in it to ride the trend of the bull market. So not sure how you feel, but that's generally like how I'm thinking about it. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that if you have the mental fortitude to be, bullish when everybody else is bearish, that has really paid off, and especially in the crypto space over several cycles. I think the best entrepreneurs, or a lot of times the best entrepreneurs, actually come about in the bear market, because they're like true believers in the technology, more kind of mission driven than bingo.
Driven by the prospect of a large exit or something like that. And those are the founders that we try to find. And it's easier in a bear market when when everybody thinks crypto is a pariah.
Totally agree.
You got that right. We'll be around. We stick through bear markets. Appreciate you bearing with us.
I don't even think it is a bear market, but it feels like a bear market.
You sound like a bear calling for Bitcoin 75K, Andy. I don't know.
I think I sound very reasonable. 12,000 to 125,000. Okay, let's bring it back to 80K. See where the chips lie. You know?
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
That sounds
Yeah,
great to
bring
me.
some fun and turmoil along the way.
Let's bring it down to 80K. Shake some boots, shake some freaking legs, pull some dead bodies up, and let's go again.
Yep. Well, that's crypto for you.
Sam,
that
thanks for your
right.
time, man.
Yeah,
Appreciate to have you on.
We'll see you
yeah,
next
very
time.
nice. Very nice to meet you guys finally.
Yeah,
Thanks
cheers
for
to you,
everything
man.
you do. All right. Talk later.
Thank you, man. We'll see you
Good, man.
soon.
Peace. All right, guys. We're going to take a quick break. We got another slate of guests coming in, and we'll be right back. See you guys in a sec. All right, guys, we will have Damien come up and join us, the head of growth at StarkNet. He's in the back. We're ready to go. Damien, I met Damien actually for the first time in Singapore, I think last year before. So glad to see that he's still working with StarkNet, still cooking. Let's bring him up and get the show on the road. That is not Damien. We got to go back. Oopsies. We'll get him up here, guys. Just give us a sec. Rob, what's going on in the market, man? Are we going to zero?
Yeah, I mean, under 100K, definitely a psychological number there. Little market talk before we have a little more of a technical conversation with Damien. Under 100K, definitely some psychological, flipping happening.
Oh, yeah.
I think there's some structural, there's people that bought under 100K and they've got lots of cash and they're not going to want to be underwater. So I remain bullish. I tend to think, and something that we've talked about on this is that these cycles seem to be much shorter. And so, I mean, you could say that we never really had a bull cycle. We never really had a bear cycle. It's just kind of oscillating.
We never had a bull cycle. All right, let's get Damien up. Can't have any more of this gaslighting here from Rob. Never had a bull cycle.
Here we go. Rob. Damien, what's going on, brother?
Hey, what's up, guys? Good to see you guys.
Good to have you, man. I mean, it feels like we're returning to fundamentals. ZK, things are coming back. And StarkNet is leading the way. There's like this privacy sort of vibe. Zcash, Stark, and Near all kind of leading this vibe. What's been the sentiment like? How are things at StarkNet? Give us a little temperature check over at StarkNet.
Yeah, it's really exciting. I've been at the foundation for I think maybe just over or close to 2 years at this stage. I think maybe outside of the airdrop, this is one of the most exciting times that it's been to be part of the company. It's also the culmination of a lot of hard work, and it's nice to see that the market is starting to revalue fundamentals and revalue the innovation and the tech that underlies a lot of these networks. Privacy is sort of it came out of the blue. I think a large part of the attention and also the interest has come from the fact that Ellie is a co-founder of both Zcash and StarkNet, and is one of the original authors of a lot of the papers that underlie how these can apply to blockchain technologies. His first, I think, appearance or his foray into crypto was the 2013 Bitcoin San Jose or Bitcoin Miami conference. I think San Jose, and at that particular conference, he was talking about how he could apply at the time ZK Snarks and I think PCPs to Bitcoin and enable private transactions on Bitcoin. And so this is sort of coming full circle moment. We're moving over to Bitcoin, and privacy is becoming really interesting now, and it's nice to be able to fulfill this original vision.
Very cool. Awesome. And so, I mean, we had a conversation earlier with the guys over at Near. It was very privacy centric, Zcash, and obviously these shielded transactions. Why, what is the philosophy around privacy at StarkNet? Why is Ellie so fixated on it? What, from your perspective, is so significant about incorporating privacy into the on-chain systems that we have today?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm probably going to put my own position here, and I won't try to represent how Ellie feels. But there's a very unified vision of what we're trying to do at StarkNet, and it's to there's different ways to put it. Right, you can become the execution layer for Bitcoin. You can become the financialization layer of Bitcoin. You can make Bitcoin the end means by which people transfer and transact in value. I think a lot of us came into crypto wanting this original vision. If that was to actually ever happen, one of the key characteristics that Bitcoin would need to be able to have would be privacy. Similar to how I can't see your guys' bank balances right today. It's one of the fundamental tenets of it's one of the fundamental requirements of money, and it's to not know exactly how much someone else has. Yeah, and so I think bringing it back to why this is so important in our broader vision and what we want to do on Bitcoin as well. It's that if we truly want to bring Bitcoin to the masses and become a network where financial markets and capital markets can be built around Bitcoin, privacy is one of those characteristics that we need to solve, and we need to be able to enable for Bitcoin as well. And yeah, that's why I think this narrative is so exciting, because it does feel like these two worlds are like almost meant to be together, and it's sooner or later that this is going to happen.
Yeah. So for those who don't quite understand how Starks work, is Starknet as it's designed today a private chain? Because there's a public block explorer that you can go on StarkScan, you can go on Voyager, or perhaps I've messed up the name there. You can go on a couple of things, see the transactions. So Starknet, as it is today, isn't necessarily a private chain. But how does that, is there a development plan to become a more private ZK oriented chain that actually has the benefits of that? Or what is the internal dialogue with regards to the Starknet chain with regards to its privacy?
Yeah, exactly. So Starknet today is a transparent blockchain. So there is a block explorer. It's Voyager and StarkScan, and you can see transactions on Starknet today. Everything that we've been building over this last 2.5 years has been around scale, right? And I guess to any of your audience that is familiar with ZK, ZK essentially solves two things. It solves scale and solves privacy. We've had this first component as the primary focus for building up a general purpose blockchain. But this next part, privacy, is a product milestone or a product step that can be integrated, I would say, pretty easily. What we're very excited on is this is the next focus for us. I can't give an exact timeline, but if I were to paint a vision for how privacy could be able to exist on a private blockchain, it would look something like an asset standard, which has privacy features or shielding features inbuilt into that asset standard. And so users could swap and unswap from this asset standard. And then when they swap into the asset standard, the underlying either goes into some sort of unified pool, or goes into some sort of mechanism, and then transfers within that asset standard become shielded and private, and then transfers out of that standard then become transparent on the blockchain again. It's a midway point, but it's a really exciting, even as a thought experiment, a really exciting thought experiment to go through. I think for compliant systems to be able to have a meaningful place and host meaningful financial activity today, it definitely requires privacy, but it requires privacy insofar as it won't censor, or insofar as it's legally compliant, and it won't enable, I guess, the activity that public blockchains don't want to take place on the network. This is, in my mind, how it would happen. But yeah, it's a transparent blockchain today, but adding that feature is something that we're looking for now.
Yeah, I feel like S2 is a big part of this vision too, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Kind of like the general purpose ZKVM, enabling generalizable ZK proofs.
Yeah, exactly. Abdel, I think he's the head of ecosystem at Starkware, which is the lab side for the foundation. He's the one who's really making this big push, and he's the one who's sort of been a cypherpunk and privacy maxi from the beginning as well. He's doing a lot of very interesting work on this front. I think they're exploring at this stage a white paper that looks into how we can become a Zcash L2. There's a lot of really interesting stuff that's coming out from his side. So I think it's many different angles to go through for privacy.
Now that you guys are scaling, you're incorporating Bitcoin into the roadmap and bringing Bitcoin DeFi as a centerpiece for Starknet. Obviously, you are an Ethereum L2, but as you get more and more ingrained into Bitcoin, and this is kind of building on your last point about becoming a Zcash L2. Is there a certain point where you become an Ethereum L2, a Bitcoin L2, a Zcash L2? What does the world look like? How are you thinking about becoming a little bit more expansive across the entire on-chain landscape?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's really interesting, right? The idea for Starknet and even StarkX, which is the private blockchain that Starkware had created for DYDX and Immutable and such, the idea underlying all of these innovations was to be able to enable scale in an execution environment that had very limited compute. And Ethereum at the time happened to be the most applicable environment to apply this technology in. Starkware was like, I think, one of the earliest recipients of a grant from the Ethereum Foundation to do this. But as sort of like all these systems are developing, and we have Bitcoin and all these other things happening, like the same tech can theoretically be applied to any like environment with limited compute. And so there's like other, like, I guess, implementation questions that need to be considered, like what happens in dual settlement, what happens if there's I don't know, a reorg on one of the chains, and there's like more things to be worked out on that front. But it's exciting to know that theoretically the same thing can be applied to Zcash. It obviously is applied to Ethereum, it can apply to Bitcoin, it can continue to go on. And even if it doesn't happen in this like dual settlement infrastructure, it can happen in a way where a new chain is deployed as an L2, and then between these like almost Starknet L2 instances, the interoperability between them will be very smooth as well. And so I also foresee this world where you can have a Starknet L2 instance on a Zcash, and a Starknet L2 instance on a Bitcoin, and a Starknet L2 instance on an Ethereum, and the interoperability between all of those L2 instances is actually very smooth because they all use the same programming language. All the apps can be deployed very easily again on each of these L2 instances, and then you run and then you don't have to solve for the issue of what happens if there's a reorg on the base chain. But it's very exciting, I would say, and I don't think like from a technical perspective, there's nothing stopping this from happening. It's more about an implementation, like how do we actually make this happen?
Yeah, I mean, I think like what the market's excited about is basically seeing the entire like cypherpunk values come back with regards to privacy, and then doing this in a way that technically is very sound. And so what you've just described is like a very technical roadmap to get to where you want this effectively this network to be. And I'm a bit worried that Zcash might just be like flash in the pan and people are getting overexcited about it. Like, do you guys like? People are like, Arthur Hayes was on a podcast with CoinDesk today saying that Zcash is going to get to 20% of Bitcoin's value. It's like really big claims. I don't know, man. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I can't comment on on whether or not it'll be a flash in the pan. Like, I think crypto, especially valuations in crypto, are kind of based on two things. Like, you have your fundamentals, which can be calculated as like a function of like revenue multiples, and then you have mindshare, which is just completely intangible, right? You have one thing take off 1 month and it's just like 1000x. If I try to boil it back down to like first principles and what people want and what customers want and where the end state will be, I would say that privacy, at the very least intuitively, feels like it should have a place in that end state. And so maybe this narrative mindshare aspect of it right now is a bit of is at a fever. But I would say that it's probably a core thing that the mindshare should continue to rotate back to, versus a lot of like the other more transitory things that the industry has been obsessed with over this last cycle.
Yeah, it really does feel like it kind of came out of nowhere. It caught a lot of people by surprise, and it was opened up with near intense. It kind of took this walled garden. But I also expect ZK to do something similar where it'll kind of revitalize the interop landscape, and it'll connect a lot of these chains. How much are you guys thinking about, where the next user comes from on Starknet? Are you guys thinking about kind of siphoning off users from Ethereum, kind of looking at, ETH mainnet? I mean, or are you guys looking outside the industry at, more consumer spaces? Where do you see, maybe give us some stats, on the user activity of Starknet as of late, and then also where you anticipate more of these users coming from?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think maybe to answer it, I'll wind back a little bit, right? So it feels like this Cambrian explosion in like L2s arose when like ETH gas fees just spiked to crazy amounts in DeFi summer, right? And everyone's like, we need more block space. We need to do more things. And then everyone went like, oh, more block space. Let's build L2s, and that'll solve the problem. And then we sort of hit this reckoning where we're like, oh, not everyone will. Now we have too much block space, and not everyone actually wants to transact on this block space. And you see a lot of like alt L1s and L2s really struggle to gain meaningful, not even mindshare, I'll put that aside, but meaningful traction and user activity. I think where we differentiate now in particular is it's less about just more block space and more about what do people actually want to do with that particular block space. I was very fortunate. I got to play a big part in the BTC-Fi stuff we were doing recently. But the Bitcoin play for Starknet, I think, is genuinely one of the most exciting things that a project in crypto today could be doing. If I look at what the real unlock is and what people actually want to do with their Bitcoin today, I would say is they want to access financial markets with their Bitcoin, or they want to hold their Bitcoin. And then if you want to access financial markets with your Bitcoin, you really only have centralized financial markets. So like a SEX or like a centralized lender or someone that has a counterparty, or you have decentralized financial markets for Bitcoin. And the biggest validation I see for this is actually unit and hyperliquid rate. Units UBTC and the inflows that they see and the spot volume that goes on for BTC to ETH trades on hyperliquid is a testament to show that if you give people a way to maintain the anonymity from Bitcoin into an execution environment with financial markets and not compromise on, I guess isn't added trust assumption for unit, but not compromise on security at the very least, then people will actually come in and they'll use that mechanism, and then they'll use their Bitcoin in financial markets. In that whale's case, it was spot markets to sell their Bitcoin for ETH. For Starknet, the end game is obviously settling on Bitcoin, and then that settlement allows for trustless Bitcoin. But even before that end game, we have partnerships in place with like Alpin that will allow for a bit VM bridge between Bitcoin and Starknet that will be trust minimized. Even before that, hopefully we have like a little interim step as well. But the idea is if you can offer Bitcoin holders a secure way that still maintains that anonymity or the pseudo anonymity, which if you deposit Bitcoin onto a centralized exchange, you lose a pseudo anonymity. If you can maintain that, and then you give them robust financial markets like swaps, like derivatives, like credit, they will come and use it. And I think that market is entirely underexplored right now. We skewed way too far on the cheap block space on L2s for Ethereum side, and we really left that aspect of like giving optionality for Bitcoin holders behind for practically like 2 cycles. It feels like the market's moving back towards this now, and the amount of capital that's kind of locked in that area is enormous. And so yeah, I guess so a long way to answer your question is the next user that we're targeting for Starknet is very much that segment of the market that currently hold Bitcoin, that don't want to lose their anonymity, that want access to financial markets, and we want that to be on Starknet.
Got it. Makes sense. Andy, I think you're on mute, but
we're bringing capital markets on chain, and they want privacy, and they want speed, and they want customizability and real reasons to use block space, not just all this commoditized, same looking block space, right?
Exactly. Bitcoin capital markets. That's pretty much it.
I think one thing that strikes me about Bitcoin DeFi, Bitcoin capital markets, is that it's a mostly institutional asset these days. Like crypto Twitter doesn't own any Bitcoin for the most part. Czech Republic's central bank bought $1 million of Bitcoin today. Luxembourg has some Bitcoin. Like this was always the dream for Bitcoiners, was that nation states would buy the bags and it would be digital gold. That would be the reserve asset of the world. And it's kind of happening, but it's an entirely different go-to-market strategy for an institutional asset class versus a retail asset class. How much do you guys think about this? What is the institutional Bitcoin capital market strategy?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's a fewfold, right? Like you're right. I do think the endgame vision for many years ago was that nation states would start adopting Bitcoin, and we are seeing really good traction there today. We're seeing more and more institutions add Bitcoin onto their balance sheet and as a way to diversify the treasury, which is also very exciting. You're right. It does seem like crypto Twitter, as a majority, don't hold that much Bitcoin. I think it's also a product of crypto Twitter across the last 2 cycles have kind of come in and like built their bags around altcoins. But I would say like maybe if you like move back to like three cycles ago, most of those people had a very large proportion of Bitcoin within their portfolio. I also expect that to change, right? I think I don't know what market it's going to be, if it's going to be a bull market or a bear market, but assuming during the next bear market and there's a big consolidation and a big weakening in the alts that don't actually have PMF and value proposition and users and traction in a direction that they're actually heading towards the market, they'll continue to get crushed, and the market will have to consolidate around hard assets. And those hard assets are either going to be stores of value like Bitcoin, or assets that have meaningful revenue that they can actually back into like a reasonable valuation. And I think post that consolidation, like that new tranche of crypto Twitter people, they'll again have a lot of Bitcoin, and then they'll sort of be looking for these same things again. But I guess like Starknet, we're still in the early innings now. Like BTC-Fi was very much about building the like on-chain financial infrastructure for BTC assets and DeFi to be able to do things just generally on-chain. There's still a lot of work to be done, right? We need to increase liquidity, we need to increase optionality, we need to have more secure Bitcoin wrappers, we need to have privacy features inbuilt into those wrappers as well. I would say once we have that infrastructure layer really robust, then we can start looking into more institutional specific strategies, and I think that those opportunities will become more and more bountiful, right? As more DATs happen and as more institutions add Bitcoin to the treasury, they'll similarly want access to credit or to leverage against that part of the treasury, and to access cash against it, and to fund OPEX, and to hire more people. Yeah, all in due course.
Yep, incredible. Damien, thanks so much for joining us, man. Starknet has been an incredible builder in the space. You have been there for going on 2 years. We're friends with a lot of people on the team. Ellie's come on several times. I chat with Benjamin on a pretty regular basis. He's doing a great job, and keep up the great work. You guys are.
Are you guys going to
awesome
Buenos
stuff.
Aires?
Yes, we'll be there. I'm guessing you guys will be there as well.
Hell yeah.
Let's do
Be
it.
there.
Yeah. Also, Robbie, Benjamin's a huge fan. Oh, of you too, Andy. He says great things about you guys, and it's great to be on here.
Awesome, Damien.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for coming on, man. We'll see you next time, and let's link up. Grab a steak in Buenos Aires.
Yeah, some wine.
Let's do it. All right. Thank you,
guys.
guys.
Hi,
man.
brother.
Later.
Cheers. Bye.
Alrighty, guys. Take a quick breather here and be back for Clouted from ETH Strategy. Then we've got Vance and Michael from Framework. And yeah, guys, hold on to your butts. See you in a sec.
Yeah, we'll go. All right, we're back from a little commercial break. We got Clouded, the founder of ETH Strategy. Should be a pretty fun conversation. I'm pretty curious because ETH Strategy is one of the few on-chain native treasury companies, if you want to call it that. They're, obviously learning and taking quite a bit from MicroStrategy and some of the other Ethereum-related treasury companies. Bitmine, SBET, we've talked to some of those guys as well. But you guys are an on-chain native Ethereum treasury product. And so I'm pretty curious what your take is on DATs in general, and then also how you came to ETH Strategy and why you chose to build this on-chain. Cloud, it's your first time on the show, man. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's good to be on. I like your show. I think you guys do great streams, so it's awesome to be on.
Appreciate
and
it.
yeah, I guess where do I start? A bunch of questions. So I mean, thoughts on DATs. I think DATs are interesting vehicles. I think that I have probably a more broad perspective on where they can go. I actually consider them as potentially the future of asset management. I would say that the model of accretive dilution and the idea of basically giving the returns of the assets under management in the form of like this accretive dilutive leverage to the holders of the company is an interesting model. I think it can go much more beyond just accruing like one certain asset. It can become like an entire asset management thing. And I do think that it enables good exogenous ways of accruing value for the holders of the shares or the token in our case. So I think DATs are interesting, and we've only really scratched the surface of where they could go if people are creative enough with the financial engineering behind the way that they accumulate and manage assets under management.
Yeah. So give us a little bit of a sense of where we're at today. Bitcoin broke under 100K. ETH is kind of trailing a little bit, around that 3,200 mark. Maybe it's going to tag 3K, maybe it goes under 3K. And obviously DATs hold a lot of the spot asset, and then they have their public shares circulating on regulated public exchanges. What are you seeing out there in the DAT world, given the market conditions that we've seen today over the last couple of days? And like we were saying, a lot of these DATs were born in more positive market conditions, and it was real easy, right? The formula makes a lot of sense. Spot asset goes up, more net assets, borrow money, raise money, and sell more shares, and then buy the spot asset again, and the flywheel continues. But that flips in more negative market conditions. So how are you seeing DATs react to this change in market structure?
Yeah, well, I think the first DAT that's done something different so far, which is the obvious thing to do actually in the DAT space, after going under NAV, is I think it was ETHZilla. They actually sold ETH to buy back their shares, and this does make sense from a purely financial perspective, because each share of a DAT should be representing X amount of assets. In this case, it's ETH. So if your share is trading under its NAV value, you can effectively buy back and multiply for the remaining shareholders the assets backing each share remaining. It's a tricky flywheel though, because whilst it does make sense financially, it increases the effective asset backing per share, so ETH per share for their case. It's a slippery slope, because you could end up winding down quite heavily if market conditions continue being bad. So if your stock keeps getting hit and going down, you're just going to constantly sell your treasury off, buy back your stock, and you could wind down quite heavily, and it could hurt you on the way back up. So I think whilst it makes sense and probably does benefit existing, like the holders that are existing and the shareholders that are existing, yeah, it is a slippery slope. I think that maybe an alternate way. I don't want to say better. I think it's better personally, but it's yet to be seen. To deal with probably more negative market conditions for DATs is to look into different forms of accretive dilution. So instead of just pure equity issuance and pure assets under management utility, you can look into issuing more exogenous debt products or alternate ways of raising capital in these different market circumstances. And this is something that ETH strategy actually led with, mainly because being on chain, we don't have the certain advantages that these traditional finance debts have, where they're able to have this deep liquidity on the stock market to sell their equities into. So we had to go with more of an exogenous debt issuance to raise capital. I think for a lot of these TradFi debts, that might be the answer in this falling market. But again, it's harder to sell. So it's really a balance on how much they can raise with the other exogenous products too.
Awesome. Makes sense. By exogenous products, you mean raising debt, but not selling any of the asset. Where do they, if they can only they I'd imagine have some sort of loan to value ratio as well based on the amount of debt that they have outstanding. Where do they find the value to collateralize the debt? Is it still based on the shares that they have?
It would be based on the shares. So this is where the financial alchemy comes in, and really this is where Saylor shines, because Saylor crocked onto this basically much quicker and the earliest person to do this, and I believe it's because he had to do this. So Saylor MSTR was not born in a bullish environment where there was all this irrational bullishness that could just bid their stock to premiums and allow them to just plow their equity into premiums. So they had to come up with more creative ways to raise that money, right? And Saylor came up with this convertible note issuance that he has. And what that is basically it is a loan. So they sell corporate bonds, but unlike just a very standardized bond where you promise to pay the principal back plus interest, instead of you can think of it as instead of giving an interest rate on the bond, you kind of promise to give the principal back at maturity, or you also promise to give them an option that they can actually exercise to convert to equity. And this is crucially really important in many dimensions, but one of them is because if the asset does go up over an extended period of time, over the duration of the bond, which are usually 4 or 5 years, it's rational for every bondholder to convert to the equity because they're going to make so much more than just getting their principal back. And that's where really the accretive dilution comes in, and the need for never actually paying off that debt, just diluting your equity. And because it's issued on the equity, you don't actually have this liquidation or margin call feature on the assets under management. It's not like a normal loan that they'll take against their Bitcoin. And this is the type of interesting financial engineering that I say that they can use exogenous products to do to continue their flywheels of increasing assets per share.
Got it. Is this exogenous debt vehicle the same mechanism that you've engineered on chain with ETH strategy?
Yeah, this is actually what inspired us, because we looked at Saylor very long time ago in 2024, before the whole DAT wave even took off. And we're a bunch of options traders and quants on our team. So what we were fascinated by was actually this convertible debt mechanism that Saylor did. Not so much the fact that he was, accumulating Bitcoin or this or that, but the fact that he sold $8 billion of these converts. We were wondering, why or how. And when we looked into it, it was quite genius. So being a very ETH maxi, as people call me, which I am, I guess, self-proclaimed, the first thing that occurred to me was, well, this should be done, but for ETH. And then the second thing that occurred to me, being the DeFi maxi I am, is this should be done on chain because it's possible to do this. And in my many years in DeFi, since it basically was born, I think that I've had this thesis that democratizing, financial products and building them from first DeFi principles is the future. It's the way to do things in this space. So naturally, that's the direction we decided to take, is to kind of replicate the core financial engineering of the convertible note trade, but as a DeFi protocol that kind of does that. A very other left curve way of doing this is a left curve way of explaining what we did was you can think of Athena as a protocol that also did this. It kind of democratized the basis trade. So people were running the basis trade in TradFi, right? They were using CME futures and spot ETFs and whatnot to kind of like long and short and extract the funding, right? And they had to manage that position. And then along came this protocol that kind of changed it into a one-click product,
Right.
and democratized it for everyone to access. We kind of have that same vision with that convertible arb trade that Sailor did, is to bring that on chain for everyone to be able to really access, because we believe that it's a great trade to be done. And I can get more into that later if you like, but yeah, that's the core of ETH strategy.
Before we get into that, one question I have is that most of the value, at least from the perspective that we've shared on the show, has been, look, there's marginal buyers that are on the periphery looking in, and they don't have the regulatory framework or the corporate structure that could allow them to buy the underlying asset, right? They just, whether it's they're lacking a custody solution, or there's sovereign wealth funds that are only permitted to go into public regulated markets. There's buyers that are on the outside looking in that don't currently have the ability to access ETH, Bitcoin, these sorts of things. And so by issuing some sort of company share on a publicly regulated exchange, that would give these marginal buyers a venue in which they can access this market. But by having an on-chain treasury product, there isn't a publicly registered vehicle or venue or buyer that's gonna now have access that previously didn't have access, right? Because now it's on chain. If they have access on chain, they can just buy the underlying spot. And so when that's the case, right, in the case of ETH strategy, what is the additional value? And there clearly is like additional value, right? Because you guys have you're trading at a premium to NAV. So what would you say is the value proposition of Strat, right? The ETH strategy token that exceeds the underlying ETH in the treasury?
Yeah, it's a good framework to think in. So I think that MSTR and the other DATs, they certainly do have a level of access premium, like you said. So there's a bunch of pool of capitals out there that can only buy stocks, equities per se.
Right.
So there's this access advantage that comes to these DATs creating these treasuries. Now, crucially, if you look into MSTR, a lot of those convertible notes that were sold, I don't know too much about, no one can really determine the stock purchases, like, maybe you can if it's sovereign wealth funds and whatnot, but the convertible notes was mainly gobbled up by Wall Street themselves. A lot of investment banks and funds that you could argue if they wanted Bitcoin exposure, they could have it, right? But they still chose to buy his converts. And that's because in finance, right, there's many dimensions to when you're bullish on an asset. There's many dimensions to how you want to kind of like get exposure to that. So I think the convertible notes offer this extra value that is not possible in any other way, even if you just buy Bitcoin, right? It gives you downside protection. So if you're a bit risk adverse and you want to take a bet on Bitcoin, but you want some downside protection, buying the convertible note can kind of ensure your principal gets returned back to you. But if it does go up, you capture a lot of the upside. And then more so than this, crucially, it's actually the fact that because convertible notes have embedded options in them, options themselves are inherently valuable. And this is where we believe most of the demand comes from, and what we've actually done on chain, which I'll get to, is when you have this option to convert, you basically have a call option on the stock. And if the stock is just a proxy for the underlying, because that's all it does, it holds the underlying, you have an option on, essentially Bitcoin, or essentially ETH in our case. And when you have this option, you can do a few things. But crucially, the reason why we and even MSTR back then issued the convertible notes and they sold off so much is because we purposely misprice the option. So this option is supposed to have a value but we sell it for extremely cheap, or we basically sell it for the implied cost of capital. Like you could buy a convertible note for $1 million, and instead of getting your whatever your cost of capital is, if you can earn 5% on that mil, you're paying that basic cost of capital to own this note instead. But you're getting this option that you can actually use to kind of trade the volatility of the underlying and extract an even higher yield out of this. And that's what ETH strategy has done. So I might be getting a bit too technical looking at your face, but
No, I'm just thinking.
basically,
I'm just thinking, like, why would you misprice the option? Why wouldn't you just set the strike price of the option lower?
you give up the option for cheap because you, as the entity, you only care about one thing. So it's a two-sided market. ETH strategy only cares about accumulating ETH. We only care about buying ETH, and we care about holding it for a very long time because we believe over a long period of time, the price is going to go up, and we want as much exposure to this asset as possible. The best way to do that is to take on debt. Now, the best debt you can take on is non-liquidatable debt. So to take on this non-liquidatable debt, no one is like retarded enough to give you a loan for free to go and buy an asset and hold it for 5 years. So
Right.
you have to give them something of very high value. And
Mhm.
we don't want it to be a funding rate. So what we give them is this option on our equity. And basically, because this option is kind of free, what they can do is they can hold it as a very long dated call option on
Mm.
the underlying, and then they can go and, for example, they can sell short dated options on ETH as a hedge every week and pocket the premiums. And that's what we actually automated on chain. So we have a product that does this with
Mm.
our conversion rights on ETH strategy, and it's been live for just over 2 months now. I think 2 months and 1 week. And there has not been a week where it's been under 10% yield, annualized yield.
Mhm.
And the highest annualized week was actually over 70% annualized.
Wow.
So by selling these weekly call options on Ethereum against these long dated call options on Strat. And that's basically why we think that there's so much value here, is because there is a trade. It's an options trade. And crucially, it's a volatility trade that is only enabled because someone, which is the debtors, can acquire mispriced options. If you go and buy an option off of Deribit or Derive today,
Mhm.
it's not mispriced. It's perfectly sharply priced because these people only speculate on options. So they're not going to sell you a cheap option or a free option. There's no arb there. It's like buying ETH at the market price. You can't buy
Right.
ETH
Yeah,
on
yeah.
Binance and then go sell it on Coinbase. But
Mhm.
if someone gave you a free Ethereum, you can go and sell it for 3,600, 200, whatever the price is. I think it's going down as we speak. But you can sell that immediately and pocket that, right? So
Yeah.
that's the arb that's going on here. And it only happens because you have this other side of the market, which is the equity side, which is like strat holders or Sailor or whoever's on the DAT side that is irrationally bullish on this asset for a very long period of time.
Wow. This is fast. So when you're so you issue the option on your protocol, and then is there a second? So there's a secondary market for these options in which there isn't a secondary market for this option. I'm gonna go sell a normal
ETH option.
ETH option, but the option that I get is from strategy is from ETH strategy, right?
Correct. So what we've done is we built an automated vault. It's called ESPN. So it's called ETH Strategy Perpetual Note. And what this does is it allows a normal person to go and put USD here. And it acts like a yield vault, like you would in any other
Mhm.
yield vault in DeFi. And the strategy behind this yield vault is that it takes the USD and it bonds it to ETH strategy. When it bonds it to our protocol goes and buys ETH with that dollars, because that's what
Mhm.
we do when we take on that loan. And we give the vault basically a long dated call option on our underlying ETH in our treasury for very cheap. Then this vault uses that as collateral on Derive, which is the decentralized options platform that we've partnered with because we're very close to the team.
Derive.
And
Okay.
yeah, Derive. And everyone should check out Derive. It's a great platform. And our vault automatically sells weekly ETH calls every week against this long dated call that we're holding. And we're actually pushing so much volume through Derive because of this. And it spits out yield every week, and we give that yield to the vault receipt holders that put the USD in.
Mhm.
And this is kind of what we've built on chain to kind of represent that volatility trade and productize it.
Wow. And do you guys have to take custody, or is this all smart contract based?
It's all smart contract based. There is multi-sigs in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Um, Man, Clouded, we've only got a few minutes left. I just want to give you a chance to kind of like wrap things up, just summarize maybe what we talked about today, because it's a very, I don't even want to, it's when we really think through the mechanism, it's not necessarily complex. I mean, it kind of builds on our understanding of DATs and how they issue debt, and not just any kind of debt, but this particular type of debt that offers the lenders who give the money to the DAT, it offers them an option, right, at a pretty fair price for those shares. And that is part of the incentive as to why lenders are going to lend money to the DAT, so that the DAT can buy ETH or Bitcoin or whatever they may choose to buy. And because there's a robust options market on the underlying asset, you can do this.
Yeah, crucially, they acquire the option for cheap.
Right.
That's the arb. Really, it's just a massive arbitrage. And the reason they get the option for cheap is because us, the retarded degens that want to go long, we just want debt that doesn't get liquidated. So we're happy to give out these cheap options, right? So that's the crucial arb that's happening here. And yeah, like I can wrap it up. Like I think like I really appreciate the time on the stream. I think if everyone wants to go check out eStrategy, you can look at the Twitter. You should definitely jump into the Telegram. There's a public TG that you can find on our website, which is ethstrat.xyz. And the product I was talking about was ESPN, the eStrategy Perpetual Note. It's live right now, so you can put USD in there. You can mint the Vault tokens, and you can kind of like start getting that yield. It's not a perfectly redeemable vault, so I wouldn't treat it like a stable coin, but it definitely has liquidity buffers and all these things. There's some level of like education curve to look into, and feel free to talk to the team in the Telegram. But yeah, it's a very interesting DeFi protocol here that we really did bring a TradFi trade and democratize it in DeFi. Something like no one in DeFi could get yield from the volatility of ETH before this, and we brought that to the table.
Love it. Yeah, there certainly is an education gap, but hopefully we helped to close that today. Clouded, thank you so much for coming on, man. Absolute pleasure. And inshallah to our ETH bags.
Yeah, inshallah. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you, man. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye. Love it. That was great. Man, complex, but this is not just another Uniswap v2 fork, bridge fork, like copy pasta code that we've seen 1,000 times. It's not some general purpose L2. These guys they recognize the treasury strategy that was working off chain, and we sort of cleared up the misconception that all of the value was just in offering a regulated product to people that weren't able to access the underlying spot asset. And so I think, that certainly cleared up things in my mind. And I think these guys are really onto something with this primitive. Definitely worth checking it out. And I've heard really great things about Derive as well, the options protocol. So check them out. I think they're doing some funky things with their token, like doing a rebrand. Maybe there's some ways to get involved there. Definitely check it out. So guys, we're going to have quick standby, and then Michael and Vince are going to come on. Andy's going to join us again, and we're going to keep this thing rolling. Be right back.
Welcome back to Rollup TV. We've got our lovely friends Vance and Michael calling in from the usual San Fran. Guys, it's freezing in Florida, and Robbie and I are both cold. Hope you guys have had way better weather than us.
50 degrees is freezing in Florida. How you guys doing?
Good. It's cold today, but was 75 and sunny all weekend.
There you go.
Beautiful.
You guys have been pretty locked in, huh? Spending a lot of
Pretty
time
locked
in the office.
Just like 9 to 5 in the same conference rooms, basically the entire day. Revolving door of guests, just like one after the other.
There you go.
Why are you guys so busy? What's going on? What's cooking?
We're in the lab.
Yeah.
In the lab, huh?
Cooking. I think the growth of RWAs on chain is driving a lot of interest from people and also a lot of investing. And pretty colorful past 2 weeks with those, I think 3 or 4 small stablecoins blowing up. But it's funny, like every large asset manager in the world is effectively coming on chain and asking, how do we bootstrap these things for liquidity? So that you got kind of the institutional side, but you've also got the side of just like the RWA degens, which I honestly didn't know was a thing until last week. But the people love yield, and it makes sense. Last cycle rates were 0. There's really no looping of like yield to be done. But now with all the tokenized yield products and all the stablecoin growth, you are seeing these communities start to form, and so that is it's pretty exciting.
And that's on the user side. I'd say on the investor side, basically every single LP or investor that we're talking to who would potentially invest in Framework is asking us how do they get access to stablecoins? And RWAs, stablecoins, tokenized assets, like they all mean the same thing, which is like tokenizing some form of asset, real world or not real world, doesn't really matter. But just about every single person who's an asset allocator is looking at what's happening with stablecoins in particular, or real world assets once they dig in a bit, and saying, how do we do it? How do we get access? And outside of buying USDC, there aren't that many options. Obviously, I'm joking, but the yield element is what is definitely driving interest.
Yeah, I mean, we were just at SmartCon last week, and I've never been, so our live stream setup was in a Fidelity sponsored lounge. You just look at the badges walking by, DTCC, the Fed, White House, JP Morgan, Goldman, all of these folks. And it was so funny. I put out this tweet. It was like, guys, the sentiment on crypto Twitter is as if we're in this like deep bear market for the trenches and everyone's lost everything. Meanwhile, the last 4 days in New York, it feels like it's a Wolf of Wall Street bull run in tokenization, like full on, get into the war zone, let's chat, like just absolute manic. Like, I mean, I get in that environment and I go manic automatically, but it was just purely like, wow. And so like, there's this dichotomy that's happening that feels like between like the crypto natives versus these institutional bull run. And I mean, there's no way to put it. It's like a stark difference.
And probably as it should be. Like, I think all of us are waiting for the thing that will really turn on the alts in terms of price action. And I think things like Clarity, things like tokenization of real world assets coming on chain, all the infrastructure, stablecoins to finance them, those are the things that stand to benefit. But if you're not in those kind of types of assets, there's not really much to be done. And so I think the despair that we see is from people holding like things like Fartcoin from like, $1.50 to like 20 cents today. I understand why that would be tough, but crypto is bifurcating, and really like the tokenization and Wall Streetification of the industry has very little to do with the rest of kind of what has historically been the core of crypto. And that's hard to grapple with, but you kind of do need to understand that.
Yeah. What do you guys tell in your portcos? Like what is the way that they ought to position themselves for the Wall Streetification of crypto?
It's really easy. Build a business model.
and
revenue meta strikes again.
Exactly. Like people like Daylight wrapping energy in stablecoins, people like USDAI wrapping GPUs in stablecoins. Crypto's contribution to this world is going to be financing the next epoch of capital markets, and those are a very real thing that happen on chain today. And so I would say if you're not in that vector, or if you don't stand to benefit from that type of activity, you do need to change your business model. Just like we don't fund things like NFT exchanges or meme coins, like those portfolio companies, of which we have very few, are dealing with kind of an existential debate as to, Do you continue on? Do you return capital? Do you pivot? And I think if you're being honest with yourself, probably pivoting is at least what you need to do. But a lot of crypto has been caught off guard by just how institutional things have gotten, and just how far away from like the more dogmatic cypherpunk vision of the future that we used to have. And that's okay. I think we do have the technology to go off and kind of impose cypherpunk values on the rest of the world, but only if you're kind of working with these institutions, which if that's anathema to you, it's going to be really tough to kind of build a real business going forward.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. I think building a real business model, it feels like there is this divergence between crypto native projects that aren't really seeing the forest through the trees, and they're getting repriced because we're not in this macroeconomic environment where everything is pumping at once because it's such a low interest rate environment and capital is flowing so easily. But because of that decoupling, I'm like, was it Zero Hedge posted this chart the other day of crypto going down while the NASDAQ was going up. And so the Wall Streetification isn't hitting crypto more broadly. Vance, you came on, maybe it wasn't last show, maybe it was the show before, and you said, look, first gold, then stocks, then crypto. And so I'm curious, do you guys think crypto's lagging right now? Or do you think it's a leading indicator, it's bottoming, and it's kind of showing where stocks are headed, and then we're going to flip the scales? How are you guys seeing the current landscape when it comes to crypto decoupling from equities?
Well, so to be clear, I think one other thing we're telling portfolio companies is if you raise at some high valuation and you don't have a business model or you don't have a path to get to a profitable, economic outcome, you need to reset your valuations and expectations because those need to change if you're going to raise more capital. And so there's this kind of like re-rating while everything is shifting towards the new business model narrative, revenue narrative. But I also think what's happening in the background, and this is more particular in the last maybe 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks, is basically after 10/10, which was almost exactly a month ago. I think a lot of crypto native capital had their finger on the trigger and was ready to fire sale whatever they could at the first sniff of there being some sort of market correction, with the expectation that we're at the end of the 4-year cycle and that we're going to have another 60 to 70% drawdown and it's going to look exactly like it did. Well, I think that assumes that is pretty fundamentally flawed assumptions just baked into it, because what it also assumes is that there was this parabolic run up and that we had this blow off top and then everything came crashing down. And I frankly just don't think that you can tie those data points together between 2025 and 2021 and for a number of reasons. And so what I think is now happening is actually an oversell in crypto because people have, like I just described, their fingers on the triggers ready to fire. And that has been the narrative over the last couple of weeks, which is why you saw, the spot Binance selling kind of consistently over the course of that week, which drew everything else down. That was from like 109 to 101 or 98 even. And I think that was basically the sell-off. And I think what you see now is people are just kind of like treading water, waiting to see what happens. It's not very obvious which direction we go next. I think that we will probably be range bound for a little while here until there's a positive market narrative. But what you also saw today is basically every single growth stock, AI, energy, some of the growthier kind of like non-energy or AI related stocks, they all sold off like 5 to 10%. And that's after selling off 5 to 10% for the last 4 or 5 days. So like some of these are in like 30, 40% drawdowns. And I think you're really starting to see, government shutdown, I think driving a lot of this, which I think in the next like day or so, or potentially, the day that this airs is the day that we're actually going to have the government shutdown be over. That's coming to an end. You have, I think, a lot of risk that was taken off the table because of that. The White House press secretary today said we may not even release the non-farm payroll and the CPI data from October. We're just going to skip it and go to November. Like, it's just like, oh, forget it. We're just going to move on forward. Like, there's just so much weird stuff going on right now. I think it naturally means that investors are taking risk off the table. But I think in crypto, this like over rotation, overselling is frankly what's going on. And I think the second that we get more data points and maybe move into December or maybe even January as to the proof positive that we have broken through this 4-year cycle. We've been talking about this since basically this time last year. There is no more 4-year cycle. And every single month that progresses, we further prove this point. I think just this is going to instantiate the fact that we are not in a 4-year cycle. We didn't have a 60 to 70% drawdown. Maybe it was a 20% drawdown or 24%, 25% drawdown, but it's not going to be this massive sell-off. And frankly, there's going to be a lot of people off sides. Like there's going to be a lot of people who sold and who are going to have to buy back in at like 20% higher. And I think that'll be kind of the December, January narrative.
Yeah, I tweeted that as well. I was like, I think if we go to all-time highs from here, there's going to be so much capital sidelined. I mean, crypto Twitter is when Donald goes bearish, then it's just like it takes crypto Twitter by the balls and is like, okay, guys, Donald is bearish, so we all need to watch out because he's the TA guy. And dude, I think he's got great charts, but him and like several others have like basically put out that they're selling, that they're kind of like overall net short. But then, Donald also put out a tweet today that was like, Bitcoin daily is at support, weekly is at support, and monthly. So I don't really hate this. So it's just kind of everyone's freaking out at support is classic. I'm one of them. Rob will tell you he's been trying to take me off the bearish ledge because I'm like, dude, it's been a really good run. Like we gotta at least kind of like set our bases here. And Rob's just like been pulling me off the bear ledge for like at least like the last week or two.
I mean, here's a question. What's the best comp for this situation from what we've seen previously? And it actually happened this year. It was end of April, early May, when Trump tariff tantrum happened. Yeah. Everybody was caught off sides. They sold, fire sold, and then had to play catch up all throughout May and June. Yeah. And that's when you saw the market rip like 2x. Some of the stocks, that are doing well now and kind of back to, where they probably should have been, like they're 5x off the lows. It is going to be an offsides narrative at some point. It's just a question of when. And I think, in those types of situations, the only situation that's bad is if you are the one that's offsides.
Yeah.
Yep. Vance, curious, anything to add, this unification of Wall Street and crypto, but this decoupling of equities from crypto, how do we balance these two?
I think they're more tightly coupled than people would probably like to admit. Like people are saying, crypto is so badly underperformed recently. And then you look at the hot AI data center stocks and they're down like 30-40%, including Oracle, which is huge. The thing that's really keeping the S&P and QQQs up is NVIDIA, which is kind of a whole separate other thing. But look, I think, people are expecting the 4-year cycle to play out as it always has. And maybe there's some, it becomes real because people collectively believe it. But even the downside targets people are posting on BTC are pretty weak. Like 7,000, 90,000. It's like, okay, it's like 10% lower than where we are today. And below 100K, there's likely a bid. We understand that there's a few folks that are quite large that pushed it from 90 over 100 in the wake of the Trump win. I think those folks returned, but it takes a while for people to see value for BTC over 100K. And even like checking, prices, it's like BTC is still over 100K. It's pretty wild. It like forever, that was the price target that people dreamed about. And I think what you're going to see going forward is a lot is happening on Ethereum. Like it doesn't necessarily need to happen on Ethereum, but it is happening on Ethereum. And just like that liquidity builds liquidity. And so there is a natural flywheel there, especially with these RWAs, which I think are the most interesting part of the market today. We see a lot of people buying Bitmine that are these large institutional funds, like the largest shareholder of this stock called Iron, which I think has literally gone up like 8 or 10x this year, sold and rotated into Bitmine. So Tom Lee is going to have additional buying power. I think Saylor, the big $1 trillion question in the market is he going to be able to sell this STRC product? And I think the base case is that he's going to be able to sell a lot more than people realize. Like he's upsized multiple euro-denominated offerings and it's trading at par. So like I have a pretty good sense of who the next marginal buyer is going to be. I think sentiment and macro are kind of like this whole other bucket, but Zero Hedge is like a pretty good barometer of like where people's heads are at. And like they've just been like lathering themselves up into like a frenzy over like, oh my God, the data centers, it's like the next margin call. It's like all going to blow up in everyone's face. Like Oracle's going to go bankrupt. Like they're posting like credit default swap prices on Oracle. I've got news for you. Oracle is not going bankrupt at any point. And so I think a lot of it is just overwrought because things have kind of been slower than people expect. I also think broad swaths of the market are no longer relevant within crypto. But at the same time, like, you see things like Zcash, and you kind of get a little inkling of like, okay, there is a bit out there for these hyper concentrated rallies. It feels like flavor of the month, week, quarter, whatever. Like, there is interest, but where there is no interest is things that don't have revenue, things that don't have earnings, or things that have, frankly, really shitty cap tables. Because as we all probably understand at this point, if you have a bad cap table, that unlock cycle takes forever. And that isn't different in TradFi either. I think like CoreWeave is struggling with that, probably some others. But, things are not, you can always find some random stock to cherry pick and say like, oh, it's gone up this much in the past 5 months. And look at crypto, it hasn't done that. That's always been the nature of the beast. But everything right now is kind of priced equally in my mind. Like, the data center plays can probably double or triple. I would say that's roughly the same with ETH and Bitcoin. But then, like, what we think, at least, and we do public equities at Framework, is like, is there anything that will 10x in the public equity space or like 5x? And there's not really, honestly. And then you look at crypto and you're like, there are things that probably can do that. Things need to change, more regulations, disclosures, flows. But I would say the equities and the coins are probably priced at parity on the large cap and mid cap size. But like on the small cap size, like the $1 billion names, there's far more opportunity in crypto than there is outside of it today.
Yeah, there is this secular, more specific repricing of assets, and it is around the coins that you, like you mentioned, have business models. Uniswap 2x'd. That's not an insignificant market cap of a coin. On their news that they were going to do some sort of buybacks, and I think that's probably how the repricing happens. We see this large jump, whereas everything else is kind of flat, and then it just tends to sustain at that higher level, whereas everything else sort of falls, where the chips do. And I want to hone in on what you said is probably the most interesting part of the cycle, or at least part of what's happening right now. And Andy mentioned something about it earlier on today's stream as well, which was this idea that we're either like rehypothecation is different than recursive lending. And when you're thinking of RWA looping, I'm curious which bucket it falls into. Maybe you could just illuminate like what is the distinction between those two, and where does RWA looping fall in?
Why don't you give us a definition?
I'll try. All right, so rehypothecation is basically just more or less like looping. It's like basically similar asset collateral, borrowing a similar asset or the same asset, and then just kind of like rehypothecating it and looping it. The recursive lending, which is kind of what I think Rob is getting at with your tweet, Vance, about curated lending markets, is effectively like I have a DeFi project, and Michael has a DeFi project, and Vance has a DeFi project. I give Michael money. He gives you money, then you give me money, and then we do it 4 times, and we all count it as TVL each time, and then it blows up in our faces. And I think that is a very simplified example of this recursive lending model that kind of caused some of the problems that we saw with these vaults and with these lending markets. Now, Rob, I think you're asking about RWAs. I think more about the tweet that you put out, Vance, which is about kind of like what happened. Maybe you could just like talk us through like the key learnings there, and am I on the right track there? I think that's kind of like the right way to think about it.
I think that's the right description. I would say the thing that caused the problem was something entirely related, but also separate in the sense that there was off-chain managers. So like in these RWAs,
these opaque kind of fund guys. Yeah.
Right. The question is, and we still don't know who those people are, is like, what are you actually tokenizing? And if you're in like a Janus Henderson AAA CLO ETF, you have very clean look-throughs in terms of what is the credit quality underlying, what are their payment schedules, have they ever missed anything? You have basically perfect information as it relates to that company. When you literally give someone money and they take it off chain and they say, we're going to generate yield for you, and we'll come back to you whenever you want it, that's when it gets pretty dangerous. And so I think just like the main thing is just like credit quality. And there are things that have, Y, X, A, B, C, USD on them. But those are not stable coins. Those are supposed to represent a dollar denominated amount of that credit, but you really have no assurances there. And so like the thing that we're really trying to do is just push the credit quality underwriting forward, push the risk management forward, push the liquidity and tranching up of risk forward. And I think that's really the path. That there's no rocket science here, but you need to build things very slowly and thoughtfully and carefully. And that is generally what Sky and we do best, is just like really not compromising on credit quality or transparency.
So the kind of curated lending market take here, and Michael, I'm sure you have some thoughts as well. What is the path forward for DeFi? Is it doing it all on chain, or is it using some sort of like Oracle or some sort of verifiable, ZK kind of tech to basically verify on chain the reserves off chain? Does it need to be like half and half, fully on chain? How do you guys see the future of like vaults and these curated kind of yield strategies going forward now that this has happened?
I think there's not one size fits all, but I think what you have to look at is what the relative risks would be for each different situation. So let's say you're able to take the assets off chain, and just to like add a little bit, I think of rehypothecation as I am taking assets out that are normally used as collateral and I'm using them in other ways. And this is like the three arrows. We're taking the Bitcoin that people put into Genesis and we're lending that, we're giving that to Three Arrows. And trust them, they'll be fine. But it's like off our platform, so that when Three Arrows isn't able to give it back, well, the assets that are stuck, Genesis has to go bankrupt. And so I think that's where you can get into real danger, when you don't have verification or you don't have basically provenance and ownership over those assets that are being used as collateral. And so when it comes to, I don't know, curated lending markets, whatever you want to call it, if you look at Sky, for instance, and there's the Janus Henderson CLO, that is tokenized and put on chain. It's tokenized by Centrifuge. Daylight just announced that they're going to be tokenizing their asset as well with DeFi today. But imagine that there's a tokenization engine. There's a custodian relationship, and Securitize is also doing this. They are a custodian. They are basically an accounting and audit firm as well. But imagine that there's a custodian of brokerage-owned assets. They are doing the buying of those brokerage assets on your behalf and then representing them on chain. And so if, for instance, you need to reclaim that collateral because something becomes under collateralized, you can reclaim the Janus Henderson CLO ETF shares. And if you need to, you can sell those. It may be T+3 for settlement to occur, but that's something that you can do, and it can be represented on chain. And so in those types of situations, you should be able to get pretty substantial leverage or pretty substantial margin off of those assets because they are instantiated on chain. And I think that just provides more trust, and therefore there's lower risk, and therefore you should get higher leverage or credit margin. And if it's something where you're saying, trust me, bro, I'm good, and give me the capital and I'll let you have the borrow, that's obviously just going to be way less trustworthy and way less creditworthy.
So Janus Henderson is maybe you don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but that's a good example of one that's doing things the right way because they have the right mechanism in place to do those redemptions. Is there any that you point to that you're like, hey, like maybe this is a mechanism that we could implement in some of those other products?
Don't want to talk ill of anyone, but I think generally speaking, the ones that are gaining AUM and TVL are winning. And doing things the right way, and those that are losing TVL and AUM are doing things the wrong way. The market always votes on this stuff, and hopefully it doesn't vote so quickly that people get hurt. But as we've seen, that is often the case with these small stablecoins.
I mean, and going back to it, as we saw with what happened on Binance, if that is exactly the case, where USDE had an issue with its pricing oracle on Binance internal. And that could be another risk as well. So it's not just the redemption, but it's how do you price this? How do you make sure that you're getting a fair and accurate pricing, especially if you're using this as real-time margin or collateral for other aspects or other products? Like that is just as important as being able to get to liquidity.
Yeah. Guys, I'd like to switch back to the Uniswap topic and the Lido buyback topic. Revenue Meta's in full swing. I did see an interesting tweet, though, about so basically there's a couple of things going on with Uniswap. First is this unification of the token. They've obviously had this equity, token bifurcation where their labs company has been making, I think it's 9 figures a year in revenue effectively, and the token holders have gotten zero. They've been, part of Andre Cronje's, valueless governance token era, which had its time in place and was likely a major result of Gensler and the lack of regulation. So, fast forward to now, obviously Hyperliquid has came in and said, you know what, guys, we're going to do it this way. And you guys are either going to adhere to what we've done or, kick rocks. And, lo and behold, some teams will kick rocks, but some teams are going to, create a real business. Uniswap is going to keep dominating, but they've introduced attack vectors to their business. What I mean by that is the VE token model that the Curve guy, Michael, created with Andre and that they kind of like built out is actually mechanically, and perhaps this is arguable, but a better way to distribute revenue back to token holders over the long term and kind of like effectively mitigate sell pressure and create a more kind of like long-term ecosystem. And the Aerodrome founder tweeted yesterday and quote tweeted the Uniswap announcement. And it was like, wow, I cannot believe that they would make this big mistake the day before we announce our huge announcement. The huge announcement today is that they're combining Aerodrome and Velodrome, and they're going to launch on Arc as well as Ethereum and some other chains and try to basically become like the dominant DEX of EVM. And so it poses a question where it's like, okay, Uniswap charges the 0.3% to the LPs. Any LP, knows that. They've introduced their UX fee either last year or earlier this year. I think it's like 25 bips or 75 bips to swap on it. And now they're introducing basically the, return of some revenue from, and I don't have the proposal in front of me, but back to the token holders. And so like there's now cypherpunk devs on the timeline saying, yeah, let's go ahead and rent seek off an immutable smart contract and call it a business. Why would I ever go to this smart contract? I'm just going to we can just fork it and make our own and, yada, yada, or XYZ. And so there's kind of this, like, there's two kind of sides to the Uniswap coin here. I'm curious from your perspectives, whether it be in relation to the competition, in relation to like the ideals of the space, or just pure economics. Like, what was your first reaction to this, and how do you think this DEX kind of landscape plays out as a result of this proposal from the number one DEX in the space?
Well, I think my visceral reaction, and look, this is paired with an understanding that Uniswap has been bleeding TVL and volume to competitors basically for the last 4 years. My visceral reaction was, it's great that they're making changes that imbue value into the token, but it's sort of like 4 years too late. We have had 4 years of innovation and differentiation and changes and models that we've tested and tried, and they just haven't, because they haven't been playing in this game. It's kind of like when OpenSea finally, after 5 years, decided that, oh, we're going to launch a token, or at least, suggested that they are. We'll see what happens. But it's like, congrats, you've kind of missed the window. Like, people have moved on. And so I hope that they're able to play catch up and do something of value, because I think they are still important infrastructure and kind of plumbing for the system. But yeah, you raised $100 million for an equity company. Like, what happens to those shareholders? You also, raise a ton of money for this token, and people have been holding it, buying it, waiting for this to happen. How are you going to subset the revenue and the value that flows to the token versus the equity? Like, there's just so many open-ended questions that I think you're going to ultimately hurt one subset in the fullness of time. And whether or not Uniswap the token is a security, like, I think there's a very strong argument that it is not. But the shareholders of the equity have definitely purchased securities in the form of the equity, and you have a fiduciary duty as someone who is running that company to those shareholders, to security holders. So there is naturally going to be a bias to help the equity holders, at least keep them in the loop in terms of value accrual versus the token, and so that's going to be a natural difficulty there. Like, this is they're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, I would say. And so it's going to be really fascinating to find out. But yeah, it feels like we have moved way past these different token models, and like things that have worked and haven't worked, we figured out and innovated. But I think they're just at the start of that journey.
Hence, do you have anything to add?
No, I think, we have followed the Aerodrome Uniswap kind of beef for a while, and it seems like it's, simmering to a boil now. I don't know what kind of the future brings for the actual fees that come to the token, given that we've seen some analysis by, and again, mostly the Aerodrome team, that a lot of the actual volume could fade when there's actually a fee implemented. And so there could be some loss of volume that comes with this. I do think the spiritual notion that they're going to go all in the token is a good one, and it can lead to a path for value recovery for basically all tokens that choose to do so. So I think, the first reaction that I had is just checking the price and seeing it up 50%. The market loves it. And at the end of the day, that's what really matters. And there's a lot of other caveats with they're going to need a 20 million uni per year budget to run things and all of that. And so there's kind of a few tie-ups. It's not like a very clean, just the token is being burnt and, huzzah. But it is a helpful path forward, and I do commend them for going there. It's great to see.
Yeah. I mean, Lido came out as well and also announced buybacks in a different fashion. Effectively, like when the market's up and their token's up, they're able to buy back more, and then when it's down, they don't want to drain the treasury as much. Was kind of like the general idea. Again, I just see Hyperliquid came in and said, guys, we're going to do it this way. And I mean, it's really forced the hand of the entire industry to really rethink. And I don't know if it's just that, but it's easy to draw that parallel.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, once one does it, the rest of the field looks absolutely silly if they're not also doing it. So
because you got now these store of value, like now, Zcash is being pitched as a store of value thing, like early Bitcoin, right? Because it's like, well, it makes no money. So like, there's really like this make money or like have this moneyness property, which you could argue Ethereum has just barely, gotten into. Bitcoin has, and like the rest are kind of, still searching.
Yep, and I think people will come to this space and write research and good things about the ones who do, and the ones that don't will kind of be left by the wayside.
Yeah.
And that's going to be really tough, but we do have to filter the wheat from the chaff at some point. And I think it's just about time. So we're happy to see it, and we're only investing in projects that really can deliver that type of value.
It's good to hear. Then just kind of to close that loop, it did feel like there is this gap right now, or this time period where you can get away with this double dipping, right? So if you're a company, you can IPO and maybe launch either a tokenized equity version or a token and kind of like double dip. That's what a lot of these, teams have been doing effectively. Is that also coming to an end? Is that getting started? Am I missing something here?
I mean, we have yet to have a single publicly traded company that has launched a token.
Yeah. So
Period. Stop.
Okay.
So I don't think that is a path forward.
Yeah.
At least in current, form, unless there's a material change. And look, this could all change with the Clarity Act. And I know that we saw the draft this week from the Ag Committee. Senate Banking Committee has put forward their draft. We have to merge those two in some, Senate passable form. So like all of this could change with that, but I don't think anything will change without that.
Yeah. The other interesting thing that came up today on the wire was ARK has announced that they want to launch a token. So I think in a similar vein here, you want to get exposure to stablecoins, right? You can buy Coinbase stock, you can buy Circle stock, and then you can now buy ARK. Obviously there's the plasmas, a couple other ways, Tether equity, and some other ways. But for the common folk, ARK now becomes a third asset under kind of like the Coinbase umbrella. Do we think that this further fractures the Circle Coin ARK trade? Does it add value to it? How do you guys think about ARK's token?
I mean, just imagine you're a massive shareholder of Circle stock, and you are probably down.
That would never be me, by the way. I mean,
I'm saying imagine.
Vance is fucking laughing at
Can't imagine it.
But you're probably down unless you bought in.
You are down, yeah. On positive earnings, you're down, by the way.
And you forecast out and you see that we're probably entering in a bit of a rate cutting cycle, which is the main form of revenue for the company. And you see that now they are launching a token. That was not, I think, disclosed in their risk disclosures or in their S1. I don't think it's been something that's been disclosed up until now. I don't know what the process is for disclosing exactly if they had to back then, but you would imagine that some value would accrue to that token that should have otherwise accrued to the equity. How do you feel?
Well, this is kind of what I was getting to. Is just like there's this kind of window here where teams are like, MetaMask is going to launch a token and Consensus is going to IPO.
We're also, yeah. Go ahead, Vance.
I think it's different in some ways, but I totally get your point. I think the question at the end of the day is like the shareholders are the ones that have the real legal rights, aka the ability to sue. And so I think we're going to kind of feel our way through this, but it's not very clean in the same way that like Uniswap Labs versus Uniswap the token is not clean. Someone usually loses.
Yeah. My 2 cents, I'll chip in. I was going to push back a little bit and say that there doesn't have to be value accrual back to the token, right? Like we still live in this world where valueless governance tokens still carry billion-dollar market valuations. So shareholders can get revenue, token holders can get this piece of whatever a token is with no value accrual, and everyone can be happy. And
as we talked about the revenue meta t-shirts that you guys are making.
Yeah,
Exactly.
we are. That's alpha, by the way, guys. That,
Like, yeah, look, I get the perspective that, you know, there are still things that exist. I think that is a fleeting perspective and a fleeting reality.
Right. Ultimately, these things get more defined and they end up converging and splitting value between one another.
Well, that's the thing, is it's going to fracture one way or another. I think that's kind of like the main point here from Mike. Guys, staking ETFs, Ethereum, Solana, approved. Do people that you guys speak to really care about staking? Like, are people really trying to get the extra yield? How do they, like, do you guys see real demand coming from it? I see Michael saying no, Vance saying yes.
So there's difference. People that we speak to are not caring about the extra 3% on their Ethereum. Like we're talking about like venture investors. It's a very different landscape, but the vast majority of capital, especially the ones that are investing in these ETFs, definitely care a ton about an extra 3% denominated in the native asset. Like that's a 3% compounding. It's like you get more Apple shares for owning Apple. Like that's great. And
But never know what it feels like.
and I generally say it's a very big deal. I'd also say if you are not Tom Lee or you are not Michael Saylor and you are running a DAT, this is a negative. This is a huge negative for you as well.
Yeah.
Can you explain that?
Well, there was an argument that because the staking ETFs did not have the ability to stake, that the DATs were actually a more capital efficient way of maintaining, you know, ownership in this network. There still is an argument that because of the rules and requirements around the liquidity that you need to be able to stake, they won't be able to fully stake their entire like ETH ETF. And while that is still true, I would imagine that there will be some rules and regulations around staking. Like right now, the staking queue for Ethereum is, you know, weeks long. And so for you to be able to have a massive amount of ETH staked within the protocol, you're going to have to be able to get to liquidity over some reasonable amount of time. So they won't be able to stake all of it. That is more like a nuance, I would say, less a strong argument. And there will probably be new rules to allow ETFs to have some staking that is commensurate to the full staking rate. So all of this is to say, I'd say you used to have this as a point of differentiation. If you were the number 3, number 4, number 5 DAT within a stakeable asset category, now that argument is gone. You have much less of a reason to exist.
Jen, it's been a great episode.
I got one last thing for you. Is the just on topic of DATs, the Hyperliquid Strategies deal should be closing here in this week or next week before Thanksgiving, I think. We had David Seamus come on and tell us that there was upwards of 350 to 400 million in capital that was pretty much dry powder, ready to go. Just curious how you guys are thinking about Hype and Hyperliquid going into this deal closing.
Look, I think we're extremely excited about Hype in general. But the other thing is, I would say everybody thinks that there's this massive unlock happening, and there is for all intents and purposes. But I would just pose the question as to like, what's their incentive to sell? You know, if Jeff is the one that funded all of this through the gains of the market maker, do you think that he's going to be one who on chain is selling assets, you know, right at the unlock? Or do you think that he's going to be holding on to this for a very long period of time? And if he has the vast majority of the team's share, what if the, you know, unlock event, as, you know, cliche as it is to say this, is actually a bullish unlock?
I knew that was coming, dude.
It's been a while since I said those two words, but it's possible.
Well, it becomes a supply sink instead of a new supply, movement. Because a big problem is that the FDV is so high, right? Versus the current valuation, it kind of throws investors off. Last thing I'll throw at you guys, I know we're quite a bit over. Lighter raised 68 million at 1.5 bill. The idea on the market was there's hyperliquid and there's nobody else. There's zero competition. Now it's like there's hyperliquid and then there's kind of like lighter now. And so does that open the door to like there's hyperliquid and then there's XYZ, ABC? How do you guys think about lighters, mainnet launch, token launch? Do you guys even give a fuck? Like, where are we at?
Don't think about them at all.
I would say the perpetual Widowmaker trade is trying to be in the number 2 or number 3 of a massive category within crypto. It has largely never worked out. And I think perpetuals and perps markets are going to play out the same way. It's 90% value accrual to the top one right now, 10% to the rest. I think that ultimately gets to 99%. So you still got another 10x value accrual to go. But I will say one thing that we are looking forward to is I think December 2nd or December 3rd, maybe the date for Fusaka. Being able to see the upgrade for Fusaka, which should actually increase TPS on layer 2s and create the base fee minimum or threshold for how those layer 2s are paying for gas. I actually think that's a pretty fundamental change on the core economics of Ethereum. Lighter will actually be one of the largest burners of Ethereum tokens in the process. So not excited necessarily about Lighter directly, but Lighter as a L2 on top of ETH is really exciting.
Yeah. All right, lads. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, guys.
Great.
Appreciate it, guys. See you next time.